The cold had teeth that morning, gnawing at the crenellations of Winterfell's battlements and settling in marrow and memory alike. Theon Greyjoy felt it first in the tips of his ears, then along the thin scar below his jaw, a pale reminder of blunt playswords traded with Robb Stark years ago when boyhood camaraderie carried no shadow of war. Now the wind came laden with the smell of wood smoke and distant fear, and Theon breathed it as though it might sharpen the resolve he had sworn, this time, to the Starks, not merely to himself. Dawn spread in hesitant bands over the training yard. Far below, stable boys hurried buckets of steaming water toward the kennels, shaggy dog howled at their passing, and Hodder's booming laugh answered him in turn. Beside the well, Maester Luwin's gray robes fluttered like a crow's wings as he stooped over young Rickon, coaxing the restless boy into reciting his letters even while the keep's walls bristled with sentries. Bran, bundled in furs, watched from his wicker seat at the window embrasure of the great keep, eyes clear and unblinking as stormglass. In those keen blue wells Theon read more than childish curiosity, he read the burden of a lordling too young for rule and too proud to shrink from it. He drank the sight in slowly, letting it steady him. For days he had hovered between quills and quarrels, dispatching ravens to rob at Moat Cailin, drilling the guards, posting riders on the King's Road, anything to drown the iron call of Pike that throbbed through his blood. But he knew the truth as surely as the direwolf banners snapping overhead, Balon Greyjoy's summons would come. When it did, what answer would he give? A moon past, he might have yearned to feel the salt on his face again. Now he tasted only ash at the memory of Balon's voice, cold as foreshore stone. When storms break, krakens take what they will. Theon exhaled, watching his breath plume silver. I am no kraken, he murmured to the morning. I am wolf-blooded, and this is my den. News of Ned Stark's imprisonment in King's Landing had struck Winterfell like a hammer on an anvil, each toll echoing through walls and bones alike. Catelyn had ridden south with their prisoner Tyrion Lannister. Robb had called the banners and marched, leaving Winterfell in Theon's care, officially Bran's regent, yet in truth the iron thread binding north and south. With Ser Roderick Castle sent east to hold White Harbor's levies, the castle's charge rested on Theon's shoulders alone. He bore it with a mixture of pride and dread. To swear loyalty was one matter, to enforce it with steel another. So he trained, morning archery with Alebelly and Poxy time, afternoon spear work opposite Hallis Malin till their palms blistered, and evenings pacing the ramparts, reciting the old words beneath his breath. * Winter is coming. * A promise and a warning intertwining like weirwood roots. On the third eve after the harvest moon, a rider flagged with fatigue clattered through the hunter's gate. He brought 2 scrolls encrusted in black wax. One from Robb, another from Lord Manderley at White Harbor. The first spoke of victories along the Green Fork, the second of sails sighted off the stony shore. Long ships, scores of them, emblazoned with the golden kraken. Theon read the words by torchlight in the great hall. Each line felt like a hook sinking deeper beneath his ribs. Father moves sooner than I guessed. Lord Manderley beseeched Winterfell for reinforcements, fearing an ironborn landing near Torrens Square. But Robb's letter commanded Winterfell to hold and send no garrison. The young wolf needed every man to press the Westerlands. Between duty to Robb and blood to Balon, Theon felt the gulf widen like a chasm beneath ice. That night he lingered in the gods' wood long after the moon raised milky banners through the black branches. The heart tree loomed, face-weeping streaks of resin. Theon knelt, though the old gods were not his own, and pressed his palm to the carved mouth. If you watch, he whispered into the cold, know that I stay. Even should Pike rise against me, I stay. His words steamed white against the crimson bark, then vanished. Dawn brought iron flight. A murder of black-feathered shafts arced over the outer walls, rattling roof tiles and lodging in yard posts. No warhorn had sounded, the attack came silent, a nightborn tide cresting against stone. Guards shouted, bells clanged, and Theon vaulted the keep steps 2 at a time, bow slung across his back. From the battlements he beheld them, triple-keeled longships drawn up in the shadowed shallows of the White Knife, their crews forming dark serpent coils across the frosted fields. Greyjoy banners whipped among them, golden krakens on black, and at their fore marched a tall, helm-crowned shape in scaled armor. Theon knew the gate before the sigil. Victarion Greyjoy, the war axe of Pike. A groan scraped Theon's throat. He knocked an arrow by reflex, though his sight blurred. Victarion here, this far north? Either Pike meant to seize the heart of Stark power or cleave his own heart with guilt. He swallowed the thought. Archers, to the merlins, he roared. Loose at the shield edges. Make them raise walls, not ladders. Pikemen to the inner yard. Shout only when you strike. Men scattered in practiced waves. Olian's breath smoked as he hefted the drawbridge chains. Rossart the cook darted from gatehouse to armory, tossing bundles of fire oil. Above the clamor, a shrill whistle cut. Maester Luwin guiding Bran and Rickon to the vaults beneath the great keep. A small voice cried, "I want my sword," then vanished in stone. Theon's chest tightened, but he turned to the task. Arrows rose and fell like sleet. Victarion's vanguard advanced behind shield locks, iron scuta interlaced. They bore no siege towers. Ironborn favored grapple and axe once close. Yet Theon had prepared, boiling pitch simmered in cauldrons and oil-soaked nets lay coiled atop the curtain wall. He drew his bow, exhaled, and loosed. The shaft found a gap between helms and a man toppled, tripping the line behind him. A moment's disruption, nothing more, but today seconds were worth crowns. "Hold!" Theon shouted along the parapet. "Make them bleed for every pace." At the east barbican, the first grappling hooks clanked against stone. Ironborn scrambled up ropes with the agility of gulls. Clay Serwyn, barely 16 and still round-cheeked, hacked a rope free, sending 2 raiders plummeting. They hit the moat ice with a crack like breaking ribs. Clay's grin flashed. A moment later, a crossbow bolt split his throat. Blood misted above his collar like red snow. Theon forced himself not to look away. He bellowed orders, fingers numb on the bowstring. Oil poured, nets ignited, screams climbed. Still the tide surged. Victarion himself seized a ladder rung and began the ascent, his axe gleaming wetly. 3 shafts bounced from his plate. He shrugged them off as though rain. When he gained the wall top, he cleaved through a pikeman's haft with a single swing and kicked the body to the courtyard. Theon found him there, 2 strides distant, smoke curling between them, their eyes locked, gray meeting gray in grim recognition. Victarion smiled, slow as rust. "Nephew," he called over the din, "come home." "I am home," Theon answered. Their axes met with a shriek of metal. Victarion pressed forward, strength monstrous, driving Theon to the crenels. Each blow jarred ribs and shoulders until they hummed. But Theon had speed and certainty. He let the larger man overcommit, then slipped inside a backswing and raked his short axe across Victarion's greave, biting steel and flesh. The captain grunted, pivoted, and was met by a flung brazier. Theon's sudden desperate heave. Coals burst across Victarion's helm, sparks fizzling in his beard. He reeled. Theon lunged, planting a boot in his uncle's chest. Victarion tottered on the brink, axe flailing for purchase, then the weight of his own armor carried him backward off the parapet. He fell with a roar and vanished in a welter of spears below. Shock rippled through the raiding lines, shouts faltered. Theon seized the moment. "Greyjoy down," he roared. "Fly the dire wolf and drive them to sea." His voice broke on the last word, but the men answered with steel. Torches arced into the siege lines, igniting tar buckets set earlier among the heather. Flames blossomed, revealing the Kraken banners shrinking like wounded things. One by one, grapples were cut, ladders pushed. When the retreat horn finally sounded from the longships, it came high and thin, almost plaintive. In its echo lay silence, the harrowed silence of the barely living. Snowflakes drifted through the smoke. Theon leaned on his axe, chest heaving, and felt blood, his own, he could not tell from others, slick beneath his gauntlet. Yet Winterfell still stood. He closed his eyes and let the dire wolf banners flap overhead, ragged and resolute. The aftermath stretched in slow, aching hours. Maester Luwin and his novices shuttled among the wounded in the great hall, whose high beams glowed with hundreds of candles lit in thanks. Ser Roderick returned 2 days later at the head of White Harbor levies, cheeks flooding with both fury and relief upon learning the castle had held. He embraced Theon before all the men, murmuring "Well done, lad," into his ear. Ravens carried word to Robb, Winterfell safe, Ironborn repelled, Theon Greyjoy true. The reply flew back swift as hope, *, hold fast. You have my trust, and the north is yours, *, the parchment smelled faintly of pine and sweat, Robb's own hand. Theon pressed it between his palms like a benediction. But the cost tallied in more than broken stone. Clay Serwyn lay in a silent row with 23 others shrouded in dirt-scented linen. Bran wheeled between them, face unreadable, while Rickon clutched shaggy dog's fur in white fists. The castle felt older, as though the oak and granite themselves had aged in those brief hours of siege. One evening, as torches guttered low, Bran summoned Theon to the solar. The boy sat beside the hearth, shadow-strewn, an open scroll of Riverland's tactics on his lap. "You saved Winterfell," Bran said, voice even. Theon opened his mouth to protest. Scores had saved Winterfell, but Bran raised a hand. "Ser Roderick agrees," the boy continued. "He says you should be named Lord Reaver of the Weeping Water for breaking your uncle's ranks." Theon laughed, soft and grim. "I need no title. Only that you live to call me friend." Bran searched his face with solemn eyes older than his years. "I do. And I think father would have too." He leaned forward, placing a small wooden wolf in Theon's palm. "Carved of heart tree, smooth and pale as bone." "Keep it," Bran said. "So you remember who you chose to be." Theon's throat thickened. He closed his fingers around the token, feeling the grain press into his scar. When the snows deepened and flurries danced like ghosts beyond the ramparts, Theon walked the godwood again. This time no wind roared, flakes settled silently on red leaves and in his dark hair. He knelt before the heart tree as before, but words failed him. Instead he placed Bran's little wolf at the roots, nestled against the face's carved tears. Behind him, footsteps scuffed. He turned to find Asha Greyjoy, sister, rival, wild-smiled, standing amid the snow. She wore a fur-lined cloak, her own arrival unseen amid the stillness. "You bested Victarion," she said, half admiring, half accusing. "He lives, but maimed in pride. Father calls for blood." Theon felt the god would tighten round them like a fist. "What does Asha call for?" he asked. Her grin was quicksilver. "I call for choices, brother. Come home and rule the sea-stone chair with me. Or stay here and drown in wolfish gratitude." He studied her, the familiar tilt of her chin, the daring spark in her eye. Once he might have stepped toward that spark. Now he turned back to the weirwood. "I am home," he said again, quieter. "I stand with the wolves." Snowflakes melted on Asha's lashes. She watched him a long moment, then exhaled. "So be it," she whispered. "May the storm spare you." She slipped away, leaving only a row of prints filling with white. Theon listened until the hush consumed her. He placed his hand on the wolf token once more, then rose. Firelight from the castle windows flickered through the trees, warm, patient, a hearth waiting. He set his shoulders, turned, and made for the gate. Behind him the heart tree watched, its red eyes bright against the dark, as though some ancient memory had stirred and found its echo in a prince who had chosen to be a wolf. Winter's hold tightened, yet life pulsed in Winterfell's veins. Seed grain was portioned, leather cured, new ramparts braced. Theon oversaw each task with tireless attention, learning the cadence of the north as though it were a ballad to be sung, the break of ice on the hot pools at dawn, the crack of antler against oak in the wolf's wood hunts, the chorus of ravens in the rookery at dusk. Letters arrived from Deepwood Motte, Lady Glover reporting further Ire-born raids beaten back by her husband Galbart's partisans, from White Harbor, Lord Manderley pledging ships to blockade Pike, and from the twins, Walder Frey's cryptic words of alliance. Ever bargaining. Through them all, Theon sensed the north knitting itself, not in Robb's shadow alone but around the promise of its own endurance. And still Balan's longships prowled the western coasts, harrying small folk and lighting beacons that reddened the night horizon. Rumor held that Euron Crozai had returned, bringing dark magic from Valeria's doom, while Dagmar Cleftjaw amassed thralls for a southern push. Each whisper reached Theon like a splinter under fingernail, yet he clung to purpose. Winterfell first, then the north, then the world beyond. On the eve of the first true blizzard, Bran summoned him once again, this time to the watchtower roof. Wind howled round the turrets, but Bran's gaze was steady on the northern skies. Auroras rippled green and white, banners of some forgotten king. "Old Nan said the lights are the souls of brave men," Bran murmured. "Do you think Robb's soul would glow so bright?" Theon wrapped a cloak about the boy. "Robb's soul blazes whether we see it or not." Bran nodded, then pointed west. "Another soul burns out there," he said softly. "Yours. Because you chose it." The lights shimmered over their faces. Theon felt the weight of the wolf carved against his chest, now strung on a leather cord. He lifted Bran onto his lap, and together they watched the sky breathe. Somewhere beyond those wild lights, Balan's fury hammered against tide and time. Yet within Winterfell's walls, the future's heartbeat drummed steady. Theon Greyjoy, ward no more, swore silently to keep it so, steel, frost, and blood-willing. Winter might be coming, but he would meet it at the gate, a wolf among krakens, unbroken and unbowed. The blizzard came like a wall of white cut from the pages of some sea god's rage. Snow swallowed sound and direction, cloaking the world in void. For 3 days Winterfell lay encased, smoke from the chimneys rising only to be crushed back by the weight of sky. Within, candles burned round the clock and bread ovens glowed red to warm the garrison. Theon walked the silent corridors, speaking with every soul, with old Chael in the library, ensuring ledgers were copied to oilskin packets. With Micken the smith, whose anvil rang night and morning forging spare rivets for the great gate, with Beth Castle, who stitched fresh dire wolves onto surcoats worn bare by ash and salt. One dawn, as the storm began to break, a horn sounded 3 long notes from the eastern rampart, visitors, not foes. Through swirling drifts rode a weary column, Galbart Glover, Midge Mormont, and a dozen survivors of skirmishes up the coast. Their cloaks were tattered, cheeks wind-cracked, yet their eyes shone triumphant. In the great hall they told their tale, how Dagmar Cleftjaw's raiders had sought to seize Deepwood Motte, only to be ambushed by Glover's forest fighters, how Bear Island longships harried Euron's approach, forcing him to flee into the Bight. Each victory small, but strung together they formed a chain strong enough to check the Kraken. Midge slammed a mail fist upon the oak table. The North remembers, she declared, and it rallies around Winterfell because it stands. Because he stood. She pointed her bare claw mace at Theon, who found his cheeks flushing heat through the stone's chill. Galbart seized on the moment. The Iron Islands falter while we grow. We should strike Pike before spring. Murmurs rose, fervent and fearful. Theon listened, a buzz in his ears. Pike. Family. Foes. He pictured the splintered, salt-sprayed towers where he was born, the great chain bridge swaying above black waves. He pictured Balon's hard mouth curving in contempt. And he pictured the heart tree's eyes gleaming red. When silence claimed the hall, Theon spoke. Winterfell will lend every sword it can spare, he said. But the seas are treacherous and Balon has yet untapped strength. We need one more ally. Midge frowned. Who? The Riverlands. Theon's voice gathered certainty. Lord Hoster's bannermen bleed beneath the lions. Yet the Kraken threatens their western flank. If we promise them respite, Edmure Tully will grant ships, grain, perhaps even men. With Riverrun's help we can strike Pike while Robb hammers the west. Eyes turned thoughtful. Galbart pursed his lips, calculating. Midge grunted approval. Then we ride to Riverrun once the road's clear, she said. We bear Winterfell's shield and yours beneath it. Theon inclined his head. Not Grey Kraken on gold, but Direwolf on ice. He felt the token press against his heart. Balon might call him Oathbreaker, he would answer Oathkeeper. So the plan was laid and the snows receded like a curtain to reveal ragged blue sky. Scouts reported Victarion's fleet limping toward Pike, decks bristling with wounded. Euron's black sails vanished seaward. The North exhaled, though no man dared claim peace. 2 weeks later, Theon rode through Winter Town at the head of 50 horse, the little wolf on his breast glinting silver. Peasants lined the frost-rimmed road, raising spears, pans, even wooden toys in salute. He nodded to each, feeling the weight of their hopes settle on his shoulders more comfortably than any cloak. At the King's Road gate Bran waited in his wicker chair, Rickon perched beside him, Shaggy Dog growling soft as thunder. Ser Roderick stood behind them, hand on sword pommel. Bran lifted his chin. Bring victory, he said in a steely voice that belied his years. Rickon echoed, victory, small but fierce. Theon dismounted, knelt, and pressed a hand to Bran's. For Winterfell, he swore. For Winterfell, Bran and Rickon answered together. Theon rose, swung into the saddle, and set his gaze southwest where the Riverlands beckoned. Snow still clung to the roadside heather, but sprigs of green showed beneath, the first proof that winter's grip could loosen if only for the brave. As the column moved off, hoofs crunching ice, Theon let his thoughts drift across hills and tidal flats to where Theon Greyjoy surely plotted vengeance. There would be blood yet and heartbreak and nights when the Kraken's song would pierce his dreams. But he would face them all holding a wolf's banner and a Stark's memory. And somewhere above, the auroras danced unseen in daylight, their green fire mirrored in the eyes of a Greyjoy who had chosen the end. Orth's cold flame over the sea's dark lure, an ember of loyalty bright enough to light the long night ahead. PGSQL. The King's Road lay half-buried beneath wind-carved ridges of snow, a pale serpent winding through the bare-limbed sentinels of the Wolfswood. Hoofbeats drummed in muted cadence, cushioned by frost, and white breath plumed from every rider like banners of surrender to the long night's chill. At their head rode Theon Greyjoy, a direwolf brooch pinned to the throat of his sable cloak and the little heart-tree wolf hanging against his breastbone. Each swing of his destria's gait made the wooden charm tap softly, an irregular heartbeat that reminded him who he was becoming and who he must never again be. Behind him thundered Midge Mormont, broad-shouldered and grim despite the ursine furs that swaddled her like a walking siege tower. Galbart Glover rode at her flank, red hair tied in a warrior's knot, eyes forever scanning tree-line and sky. A dozen other Northmen completed the vanguard. Hoikreed on his marsh pony, the Bearwin cousins huddled beneath one fir, young Benjen Tallheart who swung his sword when flies annoyed his horse simply to stay limber. 10 wagons rattled in their wake, laden with smoked venison, pitch casks, and bushels of winter barley to sweeten the Riverlord's smiles. They could'll spare it, but goodwill could buy what coin and blades could not. The storm that had imprisoned Winterfell for 3 days still haunted the sky in torn pennants of cloud. Even under pale sun, the trunks glistened with ice, each creak of saddle leather seemed a scream waiting to escape. They kept no fires by night, lest Ironborn scouts linger unseen. But Theon felt the hunt all the same, his father's shadow prowling the coasts, measuring each harbor for weakness, each creek for pillage. On the second dusk, they reached Torrens Square, half-ruined and half-mended. Lord Burren Tallheart greeted them at the gate, left arm in sling from the arrow that had scored his shoulder when he broke Dagmar Cleftjaw's pursuit. Most of the banners lining his ramparts bore patches where kraken axes had rent cloth. Yet the brazier above the keep's tower blazed bright enough to put shame to nightfall. Winterfell's hand reached us in time, Lord Burren said, gripping Theon's forearm in the northern clasp. We owe you shield and life alike. You owe me nothing, Theon answered, the warmth spread through his chest like mulled wine. We are one pack. They spent the night within walls still smelling of scorched pitch. While Gelbart wrote fresh muster orders for the baronies of the upper Weeping Water, Meej stalked the yard to gauge every bow and breastplate. Theon dined sparsely, salt pork, barley bread, a cup of tangy sour leaf ale, and took the first watch atop the battlements, staring west. Thunderheads rolled there, bruised dark. Somewhere beneath them Victarion's fleet licked its wounds, or ground axes anew. Snowflakes brushed his cheeks. He thought of Robb, hammering the Lannister lines in the Whispering Wood, of Lady Catelyn, lone as any ship's mast amidst southern intrigue, of Bran, pale face alight with torch glow as he whispered, "Bring victory." The responsibility felt vaster than the sky, yet strangely lighter than the chain his father would bind him with. I am more myself here than on any deck, Theon admitted into the wind. Salt may run in my blood, but stone steadies my heart. He slept in a narrow tower chamber just before dawn, 5 hours of dreamless dark punctured only by the distant cry of owls. In the morning Lord Burren pledged a score of tall spears to their column, each man sworn to follow Theon's call as though it came from stark lips. When snow glittered gold with first sun, they rode. The Galbart ford where the white knife narrowed to racing shallows proved treacherous under Winterfell. Ice floes drifted between slabs of stone, swirling eddies that could dash a stag to broken limb. The column lashed rope lines across and led horses at a crawl. Theon crossed midway when Meej's mount, an old shaggy courser, lost footing. Water sucked at its hooves, dragging beast and rider sidewards. Without thought Theon dismounted, plunged waist-deep, and seized the bridle. The chill bit like 1,000 nails. Together with Benjen Tallheart he hauled horse and Mormont to firmer footing. On the far bank, Meej wrung out her sleeve, steam rising. "Salt still clings to your bones, Greyjoy," she said through chattering teeth. "We'll need that stubbornness on the trident." She clapped his back, nearly driving breath from him, but her grin sparked something fierce inside his ribs, acceptance earned, not given. They made 5 leagues beyond the ford before dusk bled over the trees. The road widened, hacked clean by Bolton foresters en route to join the young wolf, and the forest thinned to low scrub. Camp rose swift. Silent ring of wagons, horses double-picketed, cook fires kindled in shielded pits carved into snowbanks. Theon walked perimeter after perimeter, unable to sink into the camaraderie around stew cauldrons. Every shadow might birth a stealth raider. His ear caught only wind until a hiss of steel on leather snapped his gaze to the treeline. A figure emerged, thin, hooded, empty hands raised. Theon had his sword bare before the man had taken 2 steps. "Stop!" he growled. Torches converged. The newcomer threw back his cowl. A boy, perhaps 17, hair bleached snow-white by birth, not age. One clouded eye filmed with blindness. The other gleamed pale blue. "Parley," the boy whispered. "Parley for the drowned god's sake." Meej strode forward, mace ready. "An ironborn whelp?" "No," Theon said. The accent was northern, though the garb beneath the cloak, salt-stiff leather, sealskin laces, told of Pike. "Speak if you would keep your life." The youth swallowed. Theon Greyjoy lies at Cape Kraken, 2 nights march west, beyond Salt Pans Falls. 70 longships, half crews mending, half ready to sail. He shivered, gaze darting. He means to strike Seaguard at Moon's turn, then the twins to sever Lord Stark's supply. Why tell us? Galbart asked, suspicion sharp. The boy wet cracked lips. Because my brothers left me to die in a cottage fire they set themselves. A spear to my belly, then the torch. He lifted his tunic, puckered burn scars spread across ribs. A woman of the woods cut me free. I owe her life, and I'll barter yours for safe passage to the neck. Meech snorted. Traitor to Kraken, wanting to be a bog lizard. Perhaps. Theon's gaze met the boy's single clear eye. Betrayal in Ironborn ranks might snap Balan's strategy. Yet every spy's tale bore poison. If your word proves true, you live. If false, he let steel whisper. They bound the youth, but gently with spare cloak and warm broth, not chains, and tucked him in the supply cart under guard. Theon scribbled a ciphered message for Ser Halder Reed at Greywater Watch, describing the claims. A spare marsh runner took Raven for mount, vanishing into night. Around second watch, Theon sat with Meej beside a guttering fire. Snow drifted fine as sifted flour, sparks spiraled to kiss the flakes. You trust that boy? She asked. I trust incentive, Theon said. Hate can grow where loyalty rots. We shall see what root he tends. She nodded, gazing into flame. You have a mind for men's hearts. That is rarer than skill with blade. Rob always said I had a mind for mischief. He smiled, then sobered. Yet hearts change. I once prized only my own. Aye. Hearts and swords both need honing. Meech poured him a skin of barebone meat. It burned down to his toes, and for the first time in days Theon sensed warmth deeper than fur could lend. 2 mornings on, scouts verified the spy's word. Gray sails clustered at Cape Kraken. A council gathered in a copse of frost-glassed alder. Maps on a stump showed coastline, tide charts. Galbart favored a night assault. Loose fire arrows to ignite tar cauldrons on unmanned decks. Meej countered that longships not burned might be captured and turned against Pike. Better a spearhead charge at dawn, smashing masts and sail while crews slept. Theon listened, knuckles pressed white against jaw. Each option cost blood they could not lavish. Yet delay risked Seaguard's ruin. He pictured Robb's warlands, each grain wagon counting toward victory. If Balan severed bread, decision is the burden of command. He drew breath. We take the harbor by night, he said, voice steady though pulse hammered. But silent, no fires. 2 boats each, cloaked in tarps, oars muffled. We cut anchor lines, jam rudders with wedges, then retreat before watch bells toll. Stranded ships lose the storm's edge but spare men. By dawn Victarion must march overland or dig channels. Either way he bleeds days. Silence followed, then Galbart chuckled. Clever wolfkraken. Let the sea turn against its sons. Meech slammed her mace against stump map, cracking bark. So be it. My bears swim as well as row. Preparations moved like clockworks wound with ice. Netbag bundles of half-sawn planks ready to jam rudder stocks, tallow greased the hinges of every oarlock, helms lacquered to dull gleam. That evening, under a sliver moon, 36 small boats slipped from a reed-girt inlet, low silhouettes upon glass-smooth water. Theon shared a skiff with Benjen, Tallheart, and the Bearwinds. Tarstink fought the sweet rod of marsh lilies. Cape Kraken jutted ahead, a black fong where lantern dots shimmered along the anchored fleet. They drifted past the breakers, letting waves nudge them alongside hull after hull. Theon's gloves creaked on wet rope as he hauled himself beneath one stern castle. Axe teeth bit anchor hawser, slow, quiet strokes until sinew parted with a sigh. The longship nosed seaward, captive to tide. Benjen climbed another rudder and hammered a wedge of weirwood between tiller and stock. There was risk, one clanged too loud, but snow-muffled sound and Ironborn slept deep after victories still tasted. Across the bay, shapes repeated motions like ghosts in mirrored dreams. A gull shrieked once, no alarm followed. 2 hours later, they drifted homeward on incoming tide, muscles trembling from cold. Behind them, longships yawed like cattle with skirts tether cut. Theon watched their silhouettes warp, some colliding, masts tangling. Sails tore with soft sighing. The sea is no man's ally, he mused. At first gray of dawn, horns blared at Cape Kraken. Distant curses echoed as Victarion's crews woke to chaos, ships grounded on sandbars, others drifting hull-kissing hull. From a dune crest, Theon raised a spyglass. He spotted his uncle striding the beach, axe gesturing, fury huge enough to rival the hammerfall of waves. No swift strike on Seaguard now, days at least to refloat, weeks to re-rig masts. Theon lowered glass, exhaling mist that coiled like smoke from quenched forge. They lost 2 men. Harl the Carter fell between hulls, crushed by prow and several frostbitten fingers. Yet spirits soared. The crippled fleet meant Riverrun would view their cause with keen interest. Riverlands proper welcomed them with soggy meadows where new spring burbled beneath snow-clad drifts. Marcher folk waved pitchfork salutes as the column clopped by. Some tossed onions into wagons, others held children to see the dire wolf brooch at Theon's throat. Word of North courage travels quicker than crows, Meej muttered. At Maidenpool they spent 2 nights. First among the half-collapsed walls of a sept burned by Lannister reavers, second within a timber hull reeking of smoked eel. Lord Mouton had fled, leaving a hedge knight named Sir John Penrose to keep order. Penrose greeted them with earnest bow and offered stout hearts eager to strike Ironborn. They had no armor finer than boiled leather, but Theon accepted 20 to swell their ranks. Men follow hope more than gold, he thought. On the estranged king's road to Riverrun, they found ruin, scorched fields dotted with sheep bones, smoking beams of a farmhouse where crows feasted. At a stream ford they discovered 4 green boys hanged from a willow, tongue-swollen, backs scarred. Chevron shields of House Derry lay splintered nearby. Theon ordered them cut down and buried, though the grave diggers tasted bile with every shovel. That night, the camp's laughter died early. He dreamt of Balan's hall beneath the seastone arch. Torchlight flickering on barnacle-clad pillars, salt wind moaning through arrow slits. Balan stood upon the dais, arms spread wide, yet no voice emerged, only the rasp of waves inside a hollow shell. Theon tried to call back that he was no traitor, but his throat filled with sand. He woke choking, heart-rattling ribs. Dawn had not yet touched the canvas. Only the wolf token glowed faintly in lantern light, its carved eyes like embers. He pressed it to lips until breathing calmed. 5 leagues shy of Riverrun, outriders bearing silver trout banners met them at a ruined mill. Ser Robin Ryger led them, jaw like quarried rock, red cloak stiff with frost. Ryger dismounted to clasp forearms with Theon. "Blackfish bid me bring you safe," he said. "And quickly. Lord Edmure has doubts. But Brynden Tully's curiosity is sharper than a Southron lance." Meej snorted. "Curiosity or suspicion?" "Both," Ryger admitted with a rueful tug of beard. They rode hard, escort swelling with knights in river azure. Midday of the next, red sandstone towers of Riverrun rose from confluence of Tumblestone and Red Fork, banners snapping bright trout and dire wolf paired. The split river mirrored them, a pale fire rode under winter sun. Drawbridge lowered, portcullis rose, trumpets sounded. In the great hall strangers arranged themselves by rank, Tully sergeants dusty from the ford, Walder Frey's grandson smirking by the doorway, Lady Cybele Spicer of Castamere whispering behind a fan. Yet atop the dais stood Brynden Blackfish, lean as aged steel, hair iron-gray. Edmure Tully sat beside him, splinted leg propped, eyes shadow-ringed. "Winterfell sends its claws far," Edmure said dryly when Theon knelt. "But this claw is part Kraken, I hear." Murmurs. Theon lifted chin. "I Krakenborn," he said clear. "And the Kraken moves against you even now. Victorian Greyjoy's fleet fettered at Cape Kraken, Balan's longships bleed the stony shore. We ride to bind the North's wrath to your rivers. With Riverrun's barges we shall land on Pike ere spring melts your last snow." Edmure's brows twitched. Before ire could spark, Brynden raised a gloved hand. "Speak the plan," he commanded. Maps were unrolled, inkpots fetched. Galbart outlined supply lines. Grain from White Harbor convoyed by river. Lumber from Tall Heart forests for siege ramps. Bear Island women archers for cliff ascent. Meej hammered every point with fist thumps. Theon added sea knowledge. Flanking currents around Pike's eastern face. Weakness of Balan's causeway chain in low tide. He spoke without notes, voice steady as anchor cable. Though inside memories churned, childhood scrapes on those same barnacle-razored stones. When he finished, silence reigned. Then a whistle, Blackfish chuckling. Ironborn weakness explained by Ironborn brain. Poetic. He paced, hands clasped behind back. But Riverrun guards its own bleeding ground. What wins for us? Gold sunk in Ironman wrecks? Or gold spent mending barns the lions burnt? His gaze drilled Theon. Theon did not flinch. Victory at Pike wins you see peace. Lannister armies march on full bellies. Cut Balan's hand now, and Lord Tywin starves for grain ships next harvest. You buy winters to come. Edmure tapped fingers on throne arm. Ships, grain, archers. He sighed. We are not the Vale drowning in coin. Yet, I would not have lions feeding iron kraken. His gaze slid to Brynden. The blackfish nodded once. I will grant 6 river galleys, 100 oarsmen, and as many barrels of salted carp as we can spare, on 2 conditions. First, Riverrun commands the flotilla. Second, when Pike falls, its plunder rebuilds these burnt farms before your own coffers swell. Theon bowed. Done. I ask only salt enough to bless the dead. The words surprised even him, but Brynden's eyes narrowed thoughtful approval. That night, feast stretched tables with smoked trout, raisin bread, casks of apple brandy salvaged from a sacked river town. Harps played, though many strings rang hollow, so many musicians dead or fled. Theon sat between Ser Desmond Grell and Lady Jane Westerling, listening more than speaking. Retreating candlelight painted the faces of survivors in amber and sorrow. He understood then that alliances were stitched with unshed tears, not parchment. When revel broke, he wandered the moonlit battlements, heart heavy with success that tasted of copper. The red fork roared below, hungry for snowmelt. A shape awaited near parapet, Brynden blackfish, cloak fluttering like raven wings. You spoke well, the blackfish said, staring at river. Yet conviction alone is not worth trust. I fought beside your father at Banefort raid. He butchered babes for sport. Wind sliced Theon's lungs. I know what Balan is, he answered. I bear his name but not his deeds. Names weigh more than deeds. Brynden turned, eyes lamplight flint. Prove otherwise. Capture Pike's great chain intact. Spare my cousin the cost of forging a new one for Red Fork defenses. Bring it to Riverrun, and your loyalty is sealed. Theon swallowed. The chain anchored towers bridging Pike's sea gulch, heavy as duty. I will bring it, he swore. The blackfish's nod cut moonlight. Then may currents favor you, Lord Theon of Winterfell. Lord. The title echoed long after Brynden left. Theon touched the wolf token. Perhaps names could change. 6 days saw frantic preparation. Trimming river galleys for ocean voyage, caulking seams with fresh pitch, loading holds with barley, smoked lamprey, kegs of bitter brown ale. Meej drilled archers on deck fighting. Galbart supervised ballista mounting. Theon roamed every inch, memorizing crew faces, temperaments. Fear hides in quiet cracks of courage. On the 7th dawn, bells chimed farewell. Snowflakes fluttered like white moths as galleys slid into Red Fork. Meej waved bearclaw mace, villagers cheered thin, throaty cheers. Theon stood at prow of the Nimria's vengeance, cloak snapping, eyes on east horizon where river met sea. Downstream they passed torched hamlets reoccupied by hopeful farmers, half-finished palisades bristling with new spears. At every bend, children shouted, Winterfell. He met each cry with raised fist, feeling weight of expectations mount like river flood. By dusk they reached Seaguard, whose great bell tower still bore scorches from Euron's raids months prior. Lord Jason Mallister greeted them upon quay, purple eagle upon silver surcoat. He inspected Theon with wary eye yet provided fresh sailcloth, new arrow stocks, and a small complement of veteran crossbowmen whose families had perished to iron-borne axes. Bring back heads, Mallister said, voice like grindstone. Theon nodded. For every head a stone laid in Seaguard's wall. They weighed anchor at Tide Peak, gliding past the rust-stained chain net that guarded harbor mouth. Once an open bay of crabs, river galleys unfurled cream sails sporting direwolf trout devices. Wind heaved them seaward. Behind, Seaguard's bell tolled once, deep and solemn as though blessing or warning. Spray kissed Theon's cheeks, brackish, familiar, yet instead of awakening longing, it sharpened resolve. The sea had not claimed him, he rode above it now, will fuse to purpose. Winter storms haunted the sunset sea like hungry leviathans. For a fortnight, galleys bucked foam-crested swells, spars groaning, decks awash with salt. Men puked midday rations into scuppers. Archers cursed pitch-slippery footing. Yet Meej strode each morning shouting bear songs, jarring sailors' spirits from despair. Galbart plotted by star and dead reckoning when clouds smothered sky. Theon studied watercolor, wave tempo, bird flight. Twice they sighted longship silhouettes on moonlit horizon. Each time Theon ordered lanterns doused, sails reefed, letting gray hulls drift past unwary. Victory required stroke, not splash. Night of the black moon, they rounded Banefort head. Theon stared long at cliffs where Balan's atrocity left infant bones. He wondered whether vengeance could truly erase blood writ into stone. Perhaps not, yet justice might seed new stories. He whispered a vow to the dark shoreline. No child shall weep for my ambition. At last, cliffs of Pike broke the dawn. Spires of slate rising from roaring surf, bridges of chain and timber webbing gorges spanned by angry foam. Smoke curled from great keep chimneys, banners of the golden kraken snapped fierce as ever. But they flew fewer than Theon remembered. Victarion's wounded fleet had not returned. Galleys anchored beyond sight of watchtowers, screening hulls behind sea stacks. Longboats were lowered, muffled oars poised. Archers blackened faces with soot. Meege drew hoods bare fur over helm, eyes like embers. Theon tightened the wolf charm against his collarbone. The assault would come in 3 prongs, Meege scaling north cliffs by rope at low tide, Galbart storming the stone bridge connecting Great Keep to Bloody Keep, Theon leading 20 picked men through a secret blowhole cavern revealed by his memories of seal hunts as a boy. There, narrow stairs spiraled up to armory stores seldom manned. Take that, they could reach Chain House above the main causeway, capture Winchwheel, and hold until others lit signal torches. Tide receded just before dusk, churn of breakers easing to reveal jagged shoals. Theon's boots squelched wet sand as he guided his unit into belly of cavern. The sea's roar amplified inside rock, drums of giants. Torches were forbidden. They climbed by feel, fingers grazing basalt damp with spray. Each heartbeat thudded like mallet on drum. Theon feared the wolf charm might rattle, yet it lay quiet. Midway, a sentry's voice echoed above. 2 ironborn quarreling about dice. Theon signaled halt, motioned pate flowers forward. The lanky bastard slipped ahead. Moments later, a soft gurgle, then silence. They advanced, finding 2 shapes slumped dead, throats red. Pate wiped blade on tunic, eyes bright in gloom. Beyond, narrow corridor opened to armory alcove. Crates of crossbow bolts and barrels of fish oil stacked high. Only 1 guard slumped dozing against wall. Jory Marsh gagged him before he could scream. Quick knife ended protest. Theon could not quell jolt of pity some farm boy pressed into Balan's pride. He pressed fingers to eyelids after blood ceased pumping. Stone stair corkscrewed upward into Chain House, a squat tower straddling twin pinnacles. Twin iron winches, each wound with links thick as a man's wrist, controlled the suspended chain boom across the narrow channel. Seated at a table were 3 officers sharing oat bread. When Theon and his men burst in, steel flashed. 1 ironborn fell with quarrel through neck before blade left sheath, another swung axe wide and was skewered. The third, a rangy man with patch over eye, lunged for warning bell rope. Theon hurled his short spear, it punched eye socket in shower of bone and bell never rang. They barred the doors, posted archers at arrow slits. Outside, dusk boiled copper on western clouds. Far below, torches winked on cliff face. Meech's signal. On the bridge span to Bloody Keep, Galbart's men rushed shields high amid showers of stones. Horns brayed, Pike awoke. Inside Chain House, chaos of timbers hammered. Ironborn roused within Great Keep tried to break in. Theon directed men to tilt Winchwheel. Inch by inch the massive chain descended, links clanking as counterweights groaned. When it settled on rocky floor of channel, a distant crash sounded. Galbart's ram smashing gate hinge freed by sagging chain. Then came blast of warhorn from sea river on galleys sailing ablaze with lanterns. Their masts bore dire wolves and trouts side by side, silhouettes against dying sun. On ramparts above, ironborn archers scrambled, their vantage now a prison as friendly chain trapped them inside causeway. Battle fog thickened, fire arrows arcing, rocks smashing on helms, screams mingled with wave thunder. Theon paced parapet, loosing shafts. One found a gilded helm he recognized. Aaron Damfair's zealot eyes widened before tumbling 30 feet. Theon felt no triumph, only grim acceptance. Gods drown many sons. A crash rock tower door, battering ram from inside? He braced bar just as timber splintered. Smoke billowed through cracks. Ironborn used burning oil. Heat licked walls. Men exchanged nervous glances. Theon's heart hammered but voice stayed calm. Hold. Stone outlasts flame. They cannot burn us without burning chain. Balan prizes that too dear. He hoped truth matched words. Minutes crawled molten. Roof beams hissed, shingles smoldered. Then horns sounded retreat. Galbart's force breached Great Keep courtyard, torches blooming crimson. Symphonies of combat drifted upward, clash, shriek, the wet slap of axe meeting flesh. Mead's roar echoed from battlements. For the north, wolves howled below. Pressure at door ceased. Smoke cleared. Theon swung breach panel, corridor empty save 2 charred corpses. He gave quick orders. Half his men to support courtyard purge, half to guard chain. He descended inner stair, boots skipping steps, heart racing. In yard, madness reigned. Firelight painted chaos, Mormont women archers picking targets perched like ravens on parapets, tall heart spears hemming clusters of kraken shields, Galbart in mail streaked with blood driving foes towards smithy where furnace heat shattered their courage. Amid swirl, Theon spotted a banner, black field, golden kraken, and beneath it Theon Greyjoy himself, gray hair wild, 2-hand axe reaping arcs. The courtyard seemed to shrink until only that banner and Theon remained. He pushed through melee, parrying dripping sword, leaping fallen beam. Balon's eyes found him, surprise flickered, then contempt as deep as trench water. Wretched son, Balon spat, voice raw. Your mother weeps in watery halls. She weeps for you, not me. Theon raised axe, stark steel gifted by Mikken, and advanced. Balon met him with power that rattled bone. Each stroke threatened to break blade. Theon gave ground, letting father's fury exhaust itself. Around them, battle slowed, men formed circle, mesmerized by saga writ before eyes. Wolf and kraken collided, the sound a funeral drum. A faint slide past guard, Theon slashed forearm, Balon snarled, blood spraying. Return stroke grazed Theon's shoulder, biting fur not flesh. He pivoted inside, head-low swing hooking behind Balon's knee. Old King staggered, Theon drove pommel into bearded chin. Axe clattered. Balon fell to knees amidst mud and embers. Silence fell. Smoke curled like funeral incense. Theon raised blade, but paused. Patricide tasted bitter. Execution or ransom? Then Balon's eyes, black as tide pools, hardened. His hand closed round dagger hidden in boot. Instinct overrode thought. Stark steel flashed, severing Balon's intent before dagger left sheath. Head toppled, crownless, onto churned sludge. Blood hissed on hot coals nearby. For heartbeat none breathed. Then an iron-born voice wailed grief. Another fled. Theon lowered axe, arm trembling not from exertion but from end of an era. He whispered, "The sea has no king today." Meej Mormont stepped forward, mace dripping. "Nor tomorrow. The north holds Pike." Cheers erupted, ragged, weary, half disbelieving. Yet among them, Theon felt nothing of triumph, only ache. Father, foe, lineage severed. He knelt, pressed bloodied fingers to earth, whispering a prayer he did not know. Perhaps the old gods heard. Wind shifted, clearing smoke to reveal star-pocked sky. Dawn after battle, Pike flew direwolf sigils beside trouts and bears. Surviving Ironborn swore fealty or were shipped to Seaguard dungeons. Chain house smoldered but stood. Theon's men quenched roof, links intact. Galbart oversaw coastal fires extinguished. Meej organized burial pits by creed. Salt rites for those who wished, earth for Northmen fallen. Theon walked cliffs alone. Salt wind washing scent of carnage from lungs. Below, sea crashed endless, indifferent witness. He pictured his younger self diving from these very rocks, daring distant horizons. That boy had sought glory measured in stolen trinkets and tales. This man sought peace measured in rebuilt farms and fed children. Steps behind, Asha. She stood at Pathbend, hair-whipping. Victarian's ships limp from Cape Kraken, she said without greeting. Euron fled. When they learn Balon's gone, islands will tear themselves for Salt Throne. Theon nodded. Let them. The North will not. You could rule, she said, voice softer than he remembered. Wolf crown or salt, both yours. He looked to storm-bruised horizon. I will not wear a crown of drowned bones. Let Pike choose a captain who serves peace. Asha's laugh carried sadness. Peace is a gull, brother. It lands only to steal scraps. Then I shall guard the scraps. She touched his forearm, quick squeeze, then stepped away toward path, descending to her waiting ship. Farewell, Wolf Kraken. May your pack howl loud. He watched until her sail vanished beyond spray. Then he traced the carved wolf at his throat, now crusted with blood and salt. When he returned to Great Keep, he ordered Pike's great chain dismantled, link by link. Some would forge new defenses for Riverrun, some would mend Winterfell's cracked gate. One small length he would keep unbroken, a reminder that chains can anchor or free depending on the hand that wields them. Weeks later, amidst the blue of early thaw, a procession wound through Winterfell's courtyard, wagons groaning with barrels of carp and casks of rivermen ale, carts bearing timbers from Pike's raised docks, and a mule team dragging 20 feet of iron chain polished bright. Bran Stark, seated in his ancestral wolf-carved chair, smiled as Theon presented the gift. "Does the sea still call you?" Bran asked. Theon considered gull cries overhead, timber scent mingling with pine smoke. "Less each day," he answered. "The north calls louder." Cheers rose from walls, echoed by howls of dire wolves. In that chorus, Theon heard not victory's end but beginning, a melody woven of kraken's sorrow and wolf's grace, resonant enough to carry across snows yet to fall. And he knew, at last, that loyalty was not a chain but a path, winding, perilous, yet leading always toward hearthlight if one chose to follow. PGSQL. Spring sunlight slanted in sheets of pale gold across Winterfell's broken courtyard, fusing with mist that curled from the steaming hot pools. Hammer strikes rang like bells as Mikken and his apprentices worked iron salvaged from Pike's chain into new hinges for the great oak gate. Above them, swallows dipped through air scented by fresh-turned earth, the first garden beds dug since the siege. Children chased each other beneath the shadow of the first keep, their laughter a brittle, wonderful sound Theon had not heard in moons. Each note reminded him why he had turned from the sea. Yet he could not dwell on laughter long. Ravens nested where mortar still crumbled, lists of winter stores remained a reckoning written in shivering hands. And in the tower solar where he took counsel every dawn, parchments piled higher than the mountain snows retreating beyond the shivering sea, letters from Lady Mormont requesting timber for Bear Island palisades, ledgers from Galbart Glover detailing the cost of provisioning Riverrun's galleys, fresh pleas from Lord Jason Mallister for masons to mend Seaguard's bell tower. The North and the Riverlands both leaned upon Winterfell now, as if the stones themselves could shoulder the realm's weary weight. Theon rubbed the bridge of his nose, scanning the next parchment. Sent from White Harbor, it bore Lord Wyman Manderly's florid seal and smelled of lampfish oil. The letters within spoke of trade winds turning, with the Kraken's fleets broken and Lannister galleys harried by Stormland privateers. The merman's tongue now wagged in favor of a northern Bluewater navy, one that might, in time, rival Old Town's. He offered coin, timber, even master shipwrights of the Reach who had fled Southron wars. All he required was Winterfell's voice at the next assembly of Robb Stark's war council. Winterfell's voice. The irony parted Theon's lips in a sigh that hovered between rueful and proud. Robb had not set foot in his ancestral halls since calling the banners. The young wolf fought now in the gold-veined valleys of the Westerlands. Theon's letters traveled faster than any horse, carrying reports and promises southward, but the distance felt deeper than leagues. Sometimes, late at night beneath guttering candle, Theon wondered whether his friend believed the words that bore his seal. "No coin squandered, no wolf dishonored, no rust upon the shield you left me." He could only hope that victory at Pike spoke louder than ink. The Solar's door scraped wide. Bran Stark rolled in, auburn hair unbound, face solemn in the way owls are solemn as dusk gathers. Hodder followed a step behind, humming a half-remembered lullaby. Bran's cheeks were wind-pink. He had spent an hour with the dire wolves along the broken outer wall where the summer snowdrifts melted into brown loam. "The pups are restless," Bran announced without greeting. Shaggy Dog chased one of old Nan's hens clean through the ash yard. Theon folded the parchment. "Even wolves grow weary of winter rations." "Weary of cages too," Brent said. His gaze flicked to the map spread across the table, inked rivers, harbors, new red marks for watchtowers not yet built. "We're not caging them, are we?" "No," Theon answered, though he knew Bran meant more than wolves. He gestured to a bench. Hodder lifted the boy easily, settling him beside the table. Bran peered at the tiny iron figurines marking supply lines. One, a kraken bent beneath a dire wolf's paw, made him smile faintly. "Uncle Roderick says we'll need more wagons if Robb means to hold the trident." "He's right." Theon tapped the Barrowlands road with 2 fingers. "Manderly's grain ships can land at Seaguard, but carts must haul flour across this march." The phrase still controlled the twins. "And Lord Walder offers passage for coins thicker each quarter moon." Bran traced the road's curl with 1 small finger. "We should build barges up the Blue Fork. Rickon says rivers carry secrets faster than ravens." Theon chuckled. "Rickon says many things faster than ravens." But the idea had merit. "I'll write Lord Lucan of Fairmarket for carpenters." Bran looked up. "Will father's words guide you, Theon? Family, duty, honor." Theon's heart fluttered at the echo of Lord Hoster's creed, now spoken by a boy who had not yet grown whiskers. "They guide us both," he said softly. The door thudded again. Maester Lewin entered, parchment roll in hand, cheeks flushed from climbing stairs. "A raven from King's Landing," he said, breathless. "The small council acknowledges Theon Greyjoy's death and the capture of Pike. They commend Lord Theon Greyjoy for swift resolution of the Ironborn uprising." Lewin's eyebrows rose at the title. Theon felt heat crawl his neck. Commendations from a council that butchered Ned Stark rang hollow. Lewin nodded gravely. Yet titles grant weight in letters of marque and shipping charters. If the crown names you Lord of Pike and Regent of the Iron Islands, they mean to bind you with gold chains. Bran's gaze sharpened. "Will you wear their chains?" "No." Theon tore open the seal, scanning familiar script, Ser Kevin Lannister's clerk hand, impeccably balanced. At the bottom an offer glimmered. "In recognition of your service to the realm, His Grace invites you to King's Landing to kneel and receive coronation honors." He crushed the parchment. "Mine bends only to Robb Stark," he growled. "The Iron Throne may keep its chains." Lewin sighed, relieved or troubled, Theon could not tell. "Then we must answer with refusal couched in politeness, lest they deem Winterfell in open rebellion." "Let them deem," Theon muttered, though he knew the maester spoke sense. Wars were seldom won by hatred alone. Bran leaned forward. "We should send Sansa's ghost in your stead." The room stilled. The name hung like a plaintive bell. Sansa's ghost, spun from rumor of her captivity in the Red Keep, from tear-stained whispers of songs she once sang. Theon felt a weight behind his breastbone that no iron chain could match. "If I could free her with quill and parchment, we'd have done so," he said. "For now, we temper swords and wait." Bran's eyes lingered on him, a child measuring a man's grief. Then he nodded. "We'll wait." Summer thaw swept south, turning rutted roads into sucking quagmires. Theon rode often, inspecting outlying villages, escorting grain trains bound for Moat Cailin, where Robb now wintered his host. At Lonely Hills he found orchards budding white despite trunks scorched by last year's foragers. At Barrowton the barrow mounds lay calm under green dwarfed by frost. Yet inside the mead hall Lady Dustin rallied smiths to cast spare helm plates for shield wall reinforcements. Everywhere, folk raised a cheer for the Kraken Wolf, some shy, some wild. And everywhere, Theon asked of their hunger, of their fears, promising what aid could be scraped from Winterfell's stores. One afternoon, beneath the half-collapsed watchtower of Flint's Finger, Theon encountered Ser Roderick Castle astride a piebald gelding, mail shirt spotted with rain. The grizzled knight hailed him, mustache drooping like storm-soaked fur. "You look thinner, lad," Ser Roderick said after they had clasped arms. "Your letters speak of victories, but your eyes speak of lost sleep." "Victories bed with restless dreams," Theon replied. They dismounted, seeking the lee of tumbled stone to share salted venison. Wind whipped through broken arrow slits, carrying gull cries from the shivering sea. Ser Roderick unrolled a faded banner. Direwolf merged with Kraken, stitched by Beth Castle's deft fingers. "The men call it the Grey Wolf," Ser Roderick said. "They want it flown at Moat Cailin beside Robb's. They think it lucky." Theon traced the seam where gold thread bound tentacle to Fong. "No luck in war," he said. "Only choice." Ser Roderick's eyes softened. "You made yours. Now you bear ours too. Does it chafe?" "Sometimes," Theon admitted. "But it holds me upright." "Then stand tall. Wolves must stand high for pups to see." They spoke of Robb's looming campaign, how Ser Brynden Tully marched scouts toward Lannisport, how Lord Bolton's banners stirred in the Dreadfort, how Manderly's new cogs ferried saltfish and spy reports in equal measure. Ser Roderick mentioned whispers of Stannis Baratheon's fleet massing at Dragonstone, sails furled like claws awaiting tide. "If Stannis strikes at King's Landing," Ser Roderick mused, "and Tywin regroups at Harrenhal, the Riverlands will burn anew. We may face a war on 3 fronts." Theon wiped rain from brow. "And the North becomes heart and shield." "Aye," Ser Roderick said, eyes glinting. "That is why I ride, to ask you to secure the neck. The phrase dicker too long. We need timber barges on the Blue Fork by first harvest." "Bran's notion," Theon smiled. "A sharp notion." Ser Roderick clasped shoulder. "Your wardship leaves marks on him, good ones." They parted at dusk, Theon galloping south through heather-glazed copper by setting sun. As hooves thundered rhythm, he mulled Ser Roderick's words. "You bear ours, too. The North's cause, Bran's hope, Robb's friendship, they were weights, yet not chains. Chains dragged a man under, weights could strengthen limbs." 2 moons later, news reached Winterfell that the Freys had sealed the twins to northern grain convoys, demanding rights of wardship over Lord Eddard's youngest son in exchange for passage. Lord Walder claimed the boy's heritage required southern polish. Panic rippled through the halls. Rickon, only 6 and already fierce as any dire wolf, roared when he heard. "They'll polish my sword first," he spat, stamping foot. Bran's lips tightened. Theon felt anger coil, but he tempered it. The phrase bled coin, they smelled weakness like carrion crows. He summoned the Ravenmaster, dictating a ripple of letters, one to Galbart ordering the Blue Fork barge works doubled, one to Manderley requesting levy of shallow draft dramans to sail upriver. One to Lady Dustin instructing riders to escort every cart of barley through forgotten hill trails north of the Green Fork, bypassing Walder's toll bridges. And one to Robb, urging caution, Walder's greed might be levered against his own allies. Bran watched as quills scratched parchment. "When do we send swords?" "When ravens fly worthless," Theon said. "Let the old weeper choke on lost coin before tasting steel." Yet coin was not always shield enough. 3 weeks into the barge initiative, a wounded rider tumbled through Winterfell's Hunter's Gate, chest mangled by crossbow bolt. He carried a broken shaft fletched in crimson and blue, the colors of House Fry. His dying words gasped that a convoy had been ambushed north of the Green Fork. 17 men slaughtered, for children taken hostage, wagons fired. The Great Hall rang with fury. Meej demanded mobilization. Ser Roderick gripped sword pommel until knuckles blanched. Bran's eyes burned like blue embers. Theon felt heat surge behind his sternum, yet he kept voice firm. "We ride, but not to sack the twins. We ride to free our people and break Lord Walder's purse strings." Plans spun swift. Mickon issued dirks to every stable hand, Beth stitched nightcloaks black as moonless sky. 12 horse whisperers of House Reed slunk in from the neck, faces painted river mud. With them rode the white-haired boy Theon had spared. A lank, furtive figure named Larry's Pike, who now bore the bare sigil of Mormont pinned to his jerkin. He knew Fry River watch schedules, having once drifted their shallows on smuggling runs. Redemption burned in his single blue eye. The raiding band tallied 40, 20 spears Tall Heart, 15 bow women Mormont, 5 reeds Silent as Dusk. Theon led, cloak clasped by the Grey Wolf pin. They set out under waning moon, following deer tracks through tall grasses, crossbows strapped across saddlebows. Rickon tried to follow, tears mingling with snot until Bran coaxed him back. For 5 nights they rode the secret trails of the Barrow Downs, where mist gathered low and will-o-wisps flickered like lanterns of long-dead kings. On the 6th dawn they crept to the banks of the Green Fork where pale sunlight shimmered on rippling water. Across the river squatted a half-collapsed tollhouse, gray plumes suggested cooking fires. Theon's glass spotted stout wagons within, Fry riders lounging, children penned like lambs. He gathered his officers in a willow-shrouded hollow. "We strike at dusk. Archers weaken walls from east bank. Reeds swim the ford, cut tether lines, slip captives downstream. Tall Heart spears breach gate once hostages clear. No torches, no screams." His gaze swept them. "We are wolves, not butchers." Larry's Pike raised a thin hand. "Fry watchers at the cornice change every half-bell. I'll slip inside with the reeds." Meej eyed him. "Fail and your headlines my shield edge." He nodded, one eye shining with something like gratitude. Twilight bled across sky, turning river silver black. The reeds melted into water, wearing eelskin garlands to hide blades from moonglint. On far bank, Fry sentries gambled under guttering lantern. Tall Heart archers knocked shafts, drawing strings until bowwood creaked. Theon crouched, muscles taut as bowstring himself. A reed whistle rose soft, lilting. Theon signaled. 3 arrows whispered through dusk. Lantern shattered, plunging Tollhouse Yard into gloom. Confusion erupted, shouts, running boots. Atop roof ridge, a silhouette crumpled with arrow in neck. Then the river hissed, reeds surfacing with 2 small figures clasped to their backs. Another whistle. The archers shifted target, firing deeper into yard. More shadows fell. Theon bounded from cover, Tall Heart spears flanking. They splashed the ford, water biting ankles. As they reached berm, Meej detonated from brush with bear women roaring, axes aloft. Gatekeeper barely swung crossbar before mace crushed his helm. A spear lunge felled second guard, Theon's dirk severed rope tethering a frightened boy to hitching post. In 3 breaths the yard was theirs, Fry men dead or fleeing into reeds. They found 2 hostages in a hayloft, gagged but alive. Larry's Pike knelt by them, dagger slick. Theon clapped his shoulder once, approval unspoken. Then he strode into Tollhouse, firelight guttering over walls hung with stolen wolf banners. Atop a table lay parchments, Fry ledgers ransoming passage to any merchant northbound. He smashed inkpot across them, letting black spill like tar. Wind gusted through shattered shutters, carrying hooves pounding distant track, the watch patrol returning. Tall heart spears formed line, Theon raised crossbow. But when the riders saw smoldering yard and dire wolf banners swaying, they wheeled, fleeing toward the twins. By moon high, the hostages rode safe behind their rescuers, toll house raised, ledgers burnt. Lary's pike pressed a charred scrap into Theon's palm, a list of fry fees levied upon small folk, some higher than those demanded of lords. Theon tucked it into cloak, evidence to show Robb and maybe the realm. They reached Winterfell 10 days later, horn calls heralding their return. Small folk lined gates cheering until throats hoarse. The children rescued clung to Theon's boots, parents weeping thanks. He felt stranger to such adoration, fearful it might calcify his resolve into hubris. But Bran only smiled, saying, "Wolves bring pups home." Summer reached full blossom, and with it word that Stannis Baratheon had sailed north from Dragonstone, landing by nightfall at Eastwatch by the sea. His standard, the fiery heart of Lawler, flickered crimson against the lonely wall. Ravens spoke of wildling hordes on the move, of a foreign queen across the narrow sea raising dragons anew, of Tywin Lannister retreating to Casterly Rock with coffers lightened by bribes to the Golden Company. Each tidbit threatened to overturn hard-won plans. Yet Theon held to the narrow tasks, securing food, roads, hearts. One evening in the Godwood, he found Bran beneath the heart tree, finger-tracing veins of weeping sap. Fireflies bob through dusk like embers afloat. The roots feel restless, Bran murmured without turning. Like they want to march. Theon knelt beside him. Trees remember wars. Maybe they'd rather forget. Bran's eyes gleamed in half-light. Old man said the heart trees speak. Do you think yours speaks in Pike? If it does, Theon said, it speaks in waves and gull cries, songs I no longer answer. He paused. Does this one speak to you? Bran hesitated. Sometimes. It tells me winter keeps secrets beneath the snow. And that crows watch the wall crumble. Theon studied the carved face, bleeding red sap like tears. Then we must build stronger walls. Bran looked up. Walls of stone or men? Both, Theon said. But the mortar is trust. Bran laid a small hand on the wolf charm at Theon's chest, now polished smooth by months of wear. And this is trust too? This is promise, Theon whispered. That I guard your home until flame and frost sleep. Bran smiled, and for a moment Theon felt lighter than sea spray. Harvest moon swelled red above Winterfell when Robb Stark finally rode through the Hunter's Gate. Trumpets blared, direwolves howled, and banners unfurled in joyous riot. The young wolf dismounted, dust of 1,000 leagues upon his cloak, gray eyes weary yet bright. Theon strode forth, they met halfway across courtyard, clasping arms until shoulders shook. You broke Pike, Robb said hoarsely. You starved the fry purse. You forged a navy with Manderley coin. The songs undersell you. Theon shook head. Songs gild rust. We bled true. They retreated to the great hall, candles ablaze, benches groaning with venison pies and berry tarts. Robb listened beside hearth as Theon recounted every siege, every road forged, every raven answered. Bran perched close, Rickon fidgeting with a wolf skull atop mantle. Ser Roderick and Meege flanked, pride and caution both etched in lines of age. When tale ended, Robb rose. You have done for Winterfell what even Bloodstarks might have faltered in, he said, voice carrying to rafters. I name you Warden of the Northern Marches and Guardian of the Iron Coast until the North stands free of every chain. He drew Shard Wolf, the sword once Ned's, touching flat to Theon's shoulders. Cheers thundered, flagons spilled. Theon felt tears sting eyes, unseen amidst din. Warden. Guardian. Titles forged not by crown but by pack. He bowed, whispered, I serve, and somehow the words felt different than every oath he had uttered before, lighter but rooted deeper. Later, when revelry spilled into courtyard and torches coiled smoke against star-soaked sky, Robb found Theon alone on battlements, staring toward distant dark where sea met horizon. Does the tide sing still? Robb asked. Every night, Theon admitted. But the song no longer outsings the hearth's call. Robb clapped his back. Then may our hearths burn bright. He sobered. War stretches on, brother. Tywin plots. Stannis advances. South and east bristle with crowns. I need you here. I will hold the north, Theon said, as long as breath stirs me. They stood side by side, two silhouettes against moonlight, Wolfborn and Wolfchosen, listening to the wind weave through rampart stones. Below, Winterfell pulsed with laughter and hope. Above, stars traced patient arcs no king could sway. Autumn's first frost-dusted fields when a fleet of stout blue fork barges nosed against the piers of White Harbor, holds bursting with early grain. Lord Wyman welcomed them with fanfare, praising the Grey Wolf standard that flapped from each mast. He minted silver stags bearing dire wolf and kraken entwined, christened the reforged coins, their edges serrated like chain links, forged from captured Ironborn treasure and circulated across half the north within months. Theon sent a pouch of them to Ser Brynden Tully along with a scrap of the Fry ledger. Rumor later claimed Lord Walder wept salt at the loss of his monopoly. Winter winds returned, yet famine did not. Smoke curled from every chimney in Winterfell, carrying scent of stews thick with barley and turnip rather than desperation. Children grew pink-cheeked, apprentices honed steel, horses fattened. Wolves ranged the wolfswood plentiful with hair. Still, Theon did not rest. He oversaw raising of 2 new watchtowers along the coast at Bear's Beacon and Grey Guard Point, each garrisoned by mixed crews of Northmen and reformed Ironborn like Larry's Pike. He commissioned shipwrights from the Reach to teach White Harbor carpenters the secrets of carvel planking. By midwinter, the keel of the stout Dyer, first of a true northern warcog, lay ribbing the dry dock. He arranged marriages between tall heart cousins and lesser Ironborn houses eager for peace, weaving salt and snow into cloth strong enough, he hoped, to withstand storms. And each night, before candles guttered, he walked the quiet halls to Bran's chambers, listening to the boy's latest dream of heart-tree whispers or crow-shout warnings from far dark. Some nights Bran spoke of shadows stirring beyond the wall, giants stirring, dead rising. Theon did not know what to make of such visions. But he recorded every word, dispatching ravens to Maester Aemon of the Night's Watch and to Stannis' camp at Eastwatch, offering counsel and grain stores should the wall prove porous. Answers came in dribs, cryptic or curt. Yet one letter, sealed in black wax bearing the fiery Heartstag, reached Winterfell in deepest frost. Lord Stannis thanked Warden Theon for grain and warned that fire was the only cure for cold that walked. Meech scoffed, Ser Roderick frowned, Bran merely nodded, as if the truth was neither comfort nor threat, merely fact. Year's End feast dawned clear and brutal, cold slicing lungs as banners were raised upon ramparts. Snowflakes drifted thick as goose down, settling on the Grey Wolf standard where thread glimmered. Theon stood atop the battlements with Robb, Bran, and Rickon as villages thronged Wintertown below. Bells rung, wolves howled, and torches crackled. From a platform above the gate, Robb spoke of survival, of unity, of a north unbroken. He named each house that bled beside him, each captain that guarded coast, each child who carried water. Then he turned to Theon. I was a boy when we first crossed swords, Robb said, voice loud but warm. Heir to Winterfell and ward from Pike. One sought brotherhood, the other belonging. Now, amidst storm and steel, we stand brothers forged by choice. Remember his name and what it means to choose your pack. He raised Theon's arm. Cheers shook snow from rafters. Theon felt the weight of their gaze, but also their support. And he realized loyalty was not chain or weight or even path. It was hearthlight glow that spread wider the more hearts gathered. He looked down upon crowds dotted with lanterns and thought of the world's widening dark. If hearts like this burned across every holdfast, perhaps dawn would not be so fragile. He spoke then, simple and true, as long as the winter wind carries wolf howls, my axe is yours. Not for coin, nor crown, but for the hearth we share. The north roared. Somewhere, high above swirling snow, auroras shimmered faint green, a reminder of promises traced in skyfire. Months later, as deep winter encroached and ravens whispered of dragons breathing gold fire across the narrow sea, Theon found himself once more in the Godwood, alone. The heart tree stood silent in moon silver, but snow at its roots bore new prints, the delicate pad marks of dire wolf pups born only a fortnight prior. Life beneath frost. He drew Bran's wolf charm from beneath cloak. Its edges had smoothed, but grain still whispered secrets of sap and time. Kneeling, he placed it gently beside the paw prints. Keep watch, he murmured, voice drifting like breath mist. Over them, over me. Over this fragile hearth. He straightened. Night wind hissed through red leaves, sounding almost like reply. Then he walked back toward the castle where candles burned against dark, the home he'd chosen, the pack he'd sworn, ready to meet all storms the long night might send. And though the sea's chant still lingered in distant memory, it could not outsing the promise of those lights in windows, nor the chorus of wolves crying to defend them. Vnet. North of the broken branch where the wolfswood thinned into heathland and the morning fog lay furred against the hollows, Theon Greyjoy rode between stands of birch so pale they shone like ghosts in the dawn. A hush rested on these slopes, broken only by ravens croaking above and the whicker of horses trampling frost-brittle grass. Robb had entrusted him with another patrol, a circuit to inspect the beacon mounds scattered along the King's Road's western skirt. Simple work, some would say, yet vital. One unlit fire could doom caravans to ambush, one toppled watchtower could hide a column of Sel's words come prowling up from the neck. And with rumors swirling, Tywin's reavers thin as reeds probing Moat Caelan's flank, the phrase mustering Sel sail coin in Saltpans, and Stannis still anchored at Eastwatch vigilance meant life. Dawn's gray unrolled itself into a watercolor sky as the company crested a knuckle ridge overlooking a shallow vale. Funnier banners flapped above the foremost saddle, 2 tall hearts, a reed outrider, and a dozen mixed volunteers from White Harbor eager to see fresh country. They trusted the Grey Wolf standard, trusted even the Kraken half of it, because the stories told of Pike's fall and Winterfell's rise. Theon often found those stories an ill-fitting cloak woven of heroics that glossed over blood on his hands and sleepless nights pacing stone corridors. Yet if the cloak shielded these men from fear, he wore it without complaint. At first light they reached Ruin Hill Beacon only to find snow drifted knee-deep against the low stone ring, smothering the tar pits that should have sat ready. 2 posts had snapped under wind, leaving the fire cage leaning like a drunken huntsman. A fine thing, Theon muttered, a roaring beacon would take half a day to coax from half-frozen pitch. He dismounted, boots crunching through the crust, and set the men to work, digging channels for draft, chopping kindling from a stand of pine, refashioning crossbeams using spare cart yokes. He joined them elbow-deep in resin and cold ash, fingers numbing, palms bruising. By noon smoke coiled above the hill, staining the sky so a rider 20 leagues away could mark its coil. They ate oat cakes and dried apple in the lee of the pyre while dawn sunlight melted ice from their cloaks. It was then the rider came. The one out of breath, hoarse, bleeding, a small crimson froth from its foam-slick mouth. He wore a cloak of soft green and bore the moon and pine of House Reed. Yet his face was unfamiliar, raw young, freckles stark as finmidges across his cheeks. He slid from saddle, collapsed to one knee, and thrust a sealed purse into Theon's hands. "Grace the Grey Wolf," he gasped, eyes near wild. "Ser Benjen Reed bids word. A shape rises beyond the neck. Dead men walking. Hoof fires found cold, bodies blackened. Even ironwood splits where they tread. He begs Winterfell's watch." Silence fell among the work party. Snowflakes drifted, turning the messenger's words into mist that hung between them. Theon broke the reed-sealed pouch. Inside lay a strip of wolfskin scrawled with tiny runes. He recognized Benjen Tallheart's compact hand. Half a mile of script recounted sightings. White shadows in moonlit swamp, creaking ice where ponds should lap water, 3 fishermen found frozen solid in their skiffs with nets still in their fists. And the dead's eyes, blue, burning without flame. Theon folded the strip and stared at the smoking beacon. All through summer's frail length Bran had whispered of crows at the wall and roots shivering beneath frost. Theon had penned courteous notes to Eastwatch, offered grain to Stannis' men, but dismissed the old man tales of giants and dead that walked. Now rumor pressed parchment to his palm. "We ride," he told the men, "west to Greywater's edge. If Benjen fears, so do we." They doused the beacon, leaving only embers glowing in the pit, and turned eastward along a hunter's track that snaked between low gorse. Wind rattled the stunted bushes like bones in a rattledrum. Snow thickened, plastering cloaks and shaggy horse manes so that each rider looked carved of chalk. By nightfall they reached the fissured ground marking the fringe bogs, land too treacherous for torches. They made camp in a hollow sheltered by leaning pines. No fires, Reed country frowned on flames that drew marsh raiders, and besides, Theon suspected the messenger's news would burn hotter than any hearth. He huddled beneath an oilskin tarp, quill scratching a report to Robb, * moving to confirm Reed alarm. Request Maester White's fire salts and every blacktip spear from Lumberhall. Winter rides in marsh, * he sealed it, gave it to the swiftest Tallheart, and wished him Godspeed. Sleep came grudgingly, punctured by eerie hoots and distant splashes. Sometime after moonrise he woke to find frost settling on beard stubble, heart pounding from dreams, Balon's headless body crawling up from boiling surf, eyes blazing blue, chain dragging behind. He sat beneath sagging pine boughs till dawn, wondering whether memory or prophecy haunted him harder. Greywater greeted them at midday, mist curling off winding streams, mud islets shifting beneath cattail stands, frogs croaking a dirge. Crannog boats slid from reed walls, slim figures paddling silent. Benjen Tallheart stood at the foremost prow, black hair plastered by drizzle. "You're late," he called. "The bog speaks of worse each hour." They moored at a floating wharf of lashed driftwood and followed Benjen through tunnels of willow whose branches brushed their faces with icy dew. In a shallow glade ringed by stone teeth sat 3 shrouded bodies nesting in ice. Theon knelt. Hoarfrost limned every eyelash, yet there was no breeze cold enough to freeze so quickly. One corpse had bit its own wrist, flesh frozen where teeth met skin. The eyes were gone, sockets clean black pits. I feared whites when I saw them, Benjen said low. Yet they did not rise even when we split the skulls. But look, see that mark. He pointed to a glyph burnt upon chest flesh, a shape like a sunburst of jagged lines, charred into bone. Theon traced it with gloved finger, shiver-threading spine, although ice-crusted leather. He had never seen such sigil, though old Nan's tales spoke of others marking quarry much as a hunter tags deer before winter drive. He examined the wound edges, smooth, seared like by red-hot iron. No simple spear did this. Magic or something close. We burned one, Benjen continued. Blue flame ate both flesh and bone. No grease, no smoke. Only smell of cold itself if cold had sent. Theon shook head. How many folk gone missing? 2 this past fortnight. Mostly trappers, ferrymen, a dozen children from bog villages. No prints where they vanish, only ice spines like glass grass. Behind them, the White Harbor conscripts whispered prayers. Theon straightened. We fortify. Raise beacon mounds on every mound that won't sink, we've tarcloth nets to catch these shadows. And we ride back to Winterfell for Valyrian steel and wildfire. Benjen's brows knit. Winterfell's stores hold old wildfire kegs? Not enough, Theon admitted. But Maester Luwin keeps formulae for fire salts. We will brew what pyromancers once feared. They spent 2 days among the fens, mapping vanishings, marking frost scars, teaching tall-heart spears to walk bog paths where one misstep meant drowning. Each dawn brought new rumors, lights and fog, icebergs that sang without breath. On the 3rd night, as they staked pitch pots along a causeway, the marsh hush broke with shouts. A sentry's torch flared high, silhouetting a shape lurching between cattails, woman, skin gray, hair stiff as dry reeds. Her mouth gaped, teeth rimed with frost. Blue light glowed in empty eye sockets like twin shards of trapped aurora. She moved without sound, feet not sinking. Spear points ringed her. Theon strode forward, oil lantern raised. Frost crusted his gloves. Breath plumed. The white hissed, arms jerking in spasm that rustled her reed skirt. With sudden violence she lunged at a reed scout. The boy's spear rammed her gut, but she bent around it like wind-torn sail. Theon drew wolf-steel axe, cleaved shoulder to hip. Ice cracked, blue flame burst, and the body sagged like thawed meat. Silence exploded with heartbeats. In the corpse's chest, the charred glyph blazed hot, then faded. Theon stared at the blaze scar, feeling its heat even as night froze breath. The North had dealt with whites. Stories from the wall, old Nan. But this glyph, this silent blue fire, felt new. They burned the remains at the beacon pit. Flames roared blue-white, no smoke. Every man shivered though fire roasted air. Ash drifted so fine it vanished before falling. Theon kept a shard of frozen bone, black with char, as proof. They returned to Winterfell beneath a sky the color of steel. News of the bog white spread faster than riders. Hearth tales turned to hush when Theon clattered across the drawbridge. Bran awaited in the courtyard, Maester Luwin beside, parchment ready. It's true, Theon said before they asked. He tossed the charbone to Bran. Frost smoked off its surface though daylight glared. Bran's mouth opened, pupils widened. He held the shard like cursed jade. That eve the hall filled with whispering lords. Lady Dustin, Lord Burren Tallheart, Galbart Glover fresh from Dreadfort Parley, and Wyman Manderley's envoys in whaleskin cloaks. Meege Mormont stood near high table, arms folded like cudgels. Ser Roderick sat by Rob's chair, mustache drooping in worry. Rob himself remained on western front, but his letter arrived soon after midnight. Fortify. I ride north. Theon presented all. Maps of vanishings, the glyph, the blue fire. Luwin's quills recorded questions. Could the glyph be winter magic? A mark of the others? Some new sorcery learned by the Red Priests drifting in Stannis' wake? No one knew. The scholars argued over ancient texts of the Long Night. The soldiers argued how to kill what flame embraced. Valyrian steel, Meege barked. Dragon glass. We have little, Luwin admitted. Shards from Skago's trade, perhaps a handful of arrowheads. Then we mine new, Galbart muttered, though all knew no mines bore obsidian so far north. Still, Manderley pledged coin to buy from lists, bravos, anywhere. The next morning Theon assembled a forge group, Mikken, 2 apprentices, a Bravosi swordsmith captured from Pike who now sought northern pardon, and Maester Lewin with scrolls on wildfire mixtures. They tested salts, tar, powdered bone, oil of mustard. By dusk the yard smelled of brimstone and pitch, and one anvil lay cracked by explosion that shook windows. They earned scorched eyebrows, but also a sticky green gel that clung to steel and flared hot as dragon flame when spark struck. They coated 30 arrowheads, 10 spear tips, 2 torch cages. Bran insisted on watching every test, eyes gleaming when green fire hissed across snow like emerald serpent. Robb arrived 5 days later, banners snapping against new-built ramparts. Snow whipped his cloaks, yet his expression burned. He listened to Theon in the solar, fingers drumming hilt of Shardwolf. If these shadows slither beyond neck, they'll find torchlines from Flint's finger to last hearth, Robb declared when story ended. But we must know their nature. He ordered ravens to Castle Black, to Dragonstone, even to Karth where rumor said dragons stirred. He summoned all smiths to craft arrowheads of the new green gel. He doubled sentries, garrisoned the twins, and a front to Walder Frey answered with coin and threats. And he commanded Theon to guide a ranging beyond the wall to seek origins of the glyph. Theon felt a chill colder than marsh midnight. Ranging north of the wall? That ragged line where stories birth themselves in ice? Yet he nodded. I ride. Meej volunteered, as did Galbart and Benjen Tallheart. Bran begged, but was refused. Rickon sulked. Preparations spun, fur-lined steel, grain cakes pressed with honey and fat, tents of sun-cured elk hide. White Harbor supplied ship timber for sled frames. Reed boatmen contributed flat-bottom skiffs that could be lashed to runners. The forge churned night and day, black gel arrows, wax-sealed pots of wildfire, hooks tipped with obsidian. Ser Roderick oversaw musters, Lewin copied maps from Maester texts of the lands of Always Winter. One blustery dawn the ranging host assembled just beyond Winterfell's outer gate, 50 riders, 20 sledhounds, 6 wagons laden with pitch and ale, and a pair of white ravens from the citadel, One for the wall, one for Winterfell should doom rise. Robb clasped Theon's forearm as they faced each other beside shaggy mounts. Bring me truth, Robb said, not rumor. Even if truth is colder than rumor, then we build hotter fires. Bran rolled his chair forward. He pressed into Theon's hand a stone wolf carved of snow quartz, smaller than thumb, eyes tiny sapphires. For warmth, he whispered. Theon tucked it beneath gorget, where heart pulsed. He mounted and raised axe in silent salute. Trumpets blew low. The gate yawed. The company moved out, hoofs crunching snow-hardened turf. Behind, Winterfell's banners faded into rolling white. The King's Road north of Carhold lay half-submerged in drift. They skirted deep ruts, broke ice on rarefied streams, found only hollow villages where crofters had fled to holdfasts. At Queen's Crown, the ruined holdfast tower harbored a clutch of Night's Watch deserters huddled round stolen grain. Galbart would have hung them, but Theon demanded their tongues first. Whence came they? What news beyond the wall? They spoke nervously of chill winds carrying whispers, of fires that died at dawn. No white sightings, only dread. Theon let them take the black anew, binding them to return to Castle Black with their shame. They crossed the last river over ice more than 10 feet thick, cracked tree trunks laid to bridge fissures. North of the river ground rose into hills speckled with old barrows. Flint's finger of land jutted west, the sea beyond crashing frozen spume. They turned east, aiming for the King's Road's end and the Shadow Tower. Night of the second week, as they camped in a grove of towering black pines. Snow fell silent and unceasing, mounds burying sled runners. Theon stood watch, shoulder to trunk, when something moved among the trees. A whiteness inside white, coalescing like breath made solid. He drew bow, notched gel-tip arrow. The shape advanced. Tall, emaciated, ice-crusting hair. It held no sword, yet frostbitten around its hands-shaped claws. Eyes smoldered azure. Theon whispered a warning. Meej rolled from her furs, axe ready. The thing stepped into camplight, and men cursed as rime crept across shields. Theon loosed. Arrow struck chest, burrowed deep. For one heartbeat the creature halted. Then green flame erupted, roaring blue where arrow sank. The thing shrieked a sound like splitting ice and collapsed into shards of crystal that steamed and melted into nothing. Dawn found the pines rimed in hoar that melted by midday. Theon studied the arrow stub, blackened with frostburn. Proof, the gel answered. Yet why did the thing wander alone, without whites trailing? A scout or lost? Benjen Reed wondered aloud whether the others scouted like wolves, sending lone hunters to sniff prey before driving a pack. On they ranged until the wall's shadow loomed, an endless rippled slab extending left and right beyond sight. Atop it, the shadow tower's beacon flickered weak orange. They were met by Ser Dennis Mallister, Lord Commander of that grim keep, cheeks hollow, cadre of lads scarce past beard fuzz. Your news matches ours, Ser Dennis said wearily by torch-choked hearth. Wildling scouts found burnt bodies west of Frostfangs, glyphs etched in bone. We've seen others at far range, one felled by dragonglass bolt, but each night they creep nearer. Theon described the marsh white, the blue fire. Maester Mullen, ancient and near-deaf, rummaged scrolls. He produced a brittle parchment depicting a sunburst carving from the children of the forest, said to ward sacred glens. Another scroll, in Valyrian script, told of an ice demon that brands prey for ritual binding. Interpretations clashed among the maesters present. One argued the glyph bound victims to the other hive mind. Another claimed it marked sacrifices to some elder frost deity. Ser Dennis scratched graying beard. We pierced them with dragonglass still. Steel tipped with your wildfire we know not, yet we have flasks enough to test. He eyed their wagons. But I lack men. Eastwatch stripped me to reinforce Stannis' war host. Castle Black sends only excuses, preoccupied with monarchy disputes. Theon offered 20 spears to man scarp walks. Meej gave 10 bear archers, Benjen 20 reeds to scout the haunted forest. Ser Dennis accepted with gratitude salted by despair. They camped 3 nights at Shadow Tower, forging more gel bolts, brewing pitch bombs. Snow never ceased. On the 4th dawn, scouts returned. Wildlings fleeing south claimed a white host marched between the Frostfangs valleys, hundreds, perhaps thousands, led by shadows wearing ice armor that cut moonlight. At their fore came a rider on skeletal stag, eyes like polished sapphire. Theon's gut clenched, remembering the glyph. Council of War convened. Ser Dennis urged sending message to Stannis for his red which boasted fire immune to ice. But ravens rarely pierce storms that way. Theon proposed a strike on Vanguard to study glyph origin. Reckless, some said. Necessary, others. At last they formed a small force, 10 reeds, 5 bear archers, Theon, Meej, Benjen, Galbart, 3 Night's Watch Rangers, and Lary's Pike, who insisted his sea sense might sniff salt even in snow. They left at sunset, slipping through postern on Wall's west side, descending frozen switchbacks to shadow-drowned forest. Moon cast silver bars across snow as they wound between pines. Not a bird called, only crunch of boots and hush of breath. Near midnight they spotted glow, bluish flicker behind ridge. They climbed crags on silent ropes. Below, in a bowl valley carpeted by snow sheen, the other host gathered, tall figures arrayed in circles around obsidian monoliths that pulse cold light. White's Mill Day. Hundreds in ragtag skins, frost clanking eyeless sockets. At the center stood the stag rider, spear of glimmering frost in hand, antlers rimed ivory. Then at each monolith, a body was laid out, wildlings trust. Others pressed palms to chests, glyphs burnt into flesh with soundless blaze. Blue fire spilled over wounds, seeping into ground, traveling along lines carved in ice to converge upon a central pit where something stirred. Theon's heart hammered like Smith's forge. Beyond horror lay strategy. This looked ritual, not battle. Perhaps to birth new whites, or worse. They must disrupt. Meech signaled string pull, archers notched gel arrows aimed for monolith on left. At Theon's gesture they loosed. Arrows hissed, striking frost stone. Green flame blossomed. Stone cracked, showering shards. The circle staggered. More arrows flew. One arrow pierced an other's thigh, blue-white blood hissed. The creature shrieked, staggering. Reeds flung obsidian-tipped darts, felling 2 whites. Then the host howled like a blizzard's heart. Blue eyes turned sky fire bright. White surged uphill. Theon slashed, axe meeting rotting flesh. Gel-tipped spear burst white skulls and gout of blue flame. Meech cleaved, Galbart skewered. Yet numbers pressed. Lary's Pike flung wildfire pot into pit. Explosion hoofed, green conflagration swallowing glyph lines. Monolith cracked spider-webbed. The stag rider hissed and charged up slope. Frost spear lanced toward Theon. He ducked, rolled, swung axe. Metal rang ice, frost shattered. The rider retaliated, but Meej's mace crushed stag's foreleg, beast crumpled, rider toppled. Benjen thrust dragonglass dagger into its throat. Blue fire died. Yet more others advanced. For every white dropped, two climbed. Retreat sign horn sounded thrice. They fell back along ridge, covering one another. Then Jen set tar bags alight, left path burning. Blue flame met blue eyes. Some whites stumbled into blaze, shrieking, others held back, wary of green fire. They gained forest gloom, sprinted between trunks. Snow billowed. Night turned chaotic blur of chase. When dawn grayed, they burst onto open slope below wall's base, coat beards iced. Watch archers atop parapet loosed covering shafts. Whites fell like marionettes with strings cut. Others retreated to treeline. At Shadow Tower the survivors collapsed, bones rattling. They had lost 2 reeds, a watch ranger, and 1 bear archer. Yet they had shattered 3 monoliths, slain an other captain, and learned the glyph's secret, a binding sigil channeling ice magic to raise something deeper. Maester Mullen guessed they sought to awaken a slumbering heart of winter, source unknown. Ravens flew, one to Winterfell, one to Eastwatch where Stannis' read which might parse ice rites, one to Old Town's archmasters. Days passed in fever of preparation, a wall segment slicked with wildfire traps, arrow caches loaded with gel heads, dragonglass mined from Skagos delivered by swift ship. Snow thickened. Sky darkened, yet hope flickered, fire, steel, unity. Theon rope ran in measured lines, * we met the night's heart and did not turn. Trust the fire we forge, * he ended with words he never thought he would write, tell the heart tree we fight for dawn. Far south, in gilded chambers of Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister received news of the starkening north. Whites, others, Robb's alliances. He frowned, quill tapping. An old lion knows which blizzard could bury his paw. He drafted orders, envoys to Old Town for wildfire, alliance offers to the Reach, letters to Essos sells word companies. Yet his thoughts strayed to a kraken who had become wolf, an unpredictable lord whose axe might someday carve Lannister hopes from stone. Better to keep that axe swinging north, Tywin mused, than turn south hungry for payback. In Dragonstone, Melisandre of Ass High read Stannis a raven scroll sealed with grey kraken and dire wolf entwined. She traced the burned glyph sketch with red lacquered nail, lips curling. Cold shadows stir, she whispered. Yet ice yields to flame. The prince who was promised must wield both iron and light. Stannis' face carved deeper lines, but he made no vow. Beyond the sea, in Meereen's pyramid, Daenerys Targaryen watched her dragons circle tawny sky, green and gold flame flaring. When Jorah Mormont read northern reports of ice demons, she felt a tug as if distant bells chimed. She too came from fire, yet her destiny might hinge upon snow and shadow, dragons and wolves. And northmost of all, in the haunted forest, deep beneath ruined monolith shards, the ice pit seethed. Glyph lines broken by wildfire hissed and mended slowly like veins weaving skin. In frost-black depths, an ancient heart pulsed once, a slow, ponderous beat, then went still as stone. Winter's 3rd month dawned pale as bone. Atop Winterfell's ramparts Bran watched the horizon, sensing more than seeing winds carry distant fear. Below, Theon drilled archers, gel pots glinting on belt hooks. Robb sparred with Meej in yard, each blow sending geysers of snow. Sentries walked walls, eyes skyward. When night rolled across sky, auroras kindled, green and violet ribbons twist. ING like serpents. Theon stood with Bran beside hearthtree sapling transplanted to inner ward, small now, yet its red leaves fluttered as if breathing. Do you hear them? Bran asked. Theon closed eyes, listening. Wind moaned, banners cracked, wolves howled beyond walls. But under all, he thought he heard another sound, soft rhythmic thud, distant as surf beneath ice, a heartbeat not his own. He opened eyes, meeting Bran's calm gaze. A storm marches, Bran whispered. Yet so do we. Theon nodded. Snow drifted, catching lantern light until courtyard shimmered with specks of molten silver. Somewhere far north, an ancient chill stirred, somewhere south, flames answered. Between, a man once torn between sea and stone now stood firm, wolf blood in his heart, fire in his hands, ready to guard a hearth against the long night. And though the war yet to come would test every vow, for now Winterfell glowed warm beneath falling snow, the grey wolf banner snapping its defiance against the darkness rising beyond the world's edge. Sequel. Wind keened along the wall like a bowstring drawn too tight, mourning all that might soon break. Theon Greyjoy stood on a tower ledge, oilskin cloak cracking in the gale, and gazed south across the pale miles he had marched. Ranks of spruce spearing through powder snow, the glitter of the last river coiling, distant drifts piled against hills until the land looked sculpted from chalk. Somewhere beyond those white shoulders lay Winterfell, its steaming hot pools and stone courtyards pulsing with life and fire. Somewhere beyond, too, Robb Stark waited with questions only victory could answer. Theon's gauntlet fingers locked around the rampart. Down in the yard of the Shadow Tower, his ranging party moved like black ants, dragging sleds of black gel arrowheads to an ammunition shed, unharnessing shaggy garrons, sharpening obsidian blades. Benjen Tallheart barked at two weary reeds to warm their frostburned toes. Meej Mormont strode, bareheaded despite the cold, hefting each new pot of wildfire as if weighing fate in a butcher's scale. And there, beside a brazier burning green where the gel had spilled, Larry's Pike rehearsed a torch drill with watch recruits half his age, reminding them that a single spark meant living or dying. In the silence between gusts, Theon could hear the wall itself, a groan deep inside the ice, as though a slumbering giant shifted in uneasy dreams. The sound left hairs bristling along his neck. It was easy to believe that if he pressed his ear to the frozen bulwark, he might hear the heartbeat he and Bran had once sensed, a pulse older than kingdoms. A crunch of boots on hoarfrost signaled Galbart Glover's approach. He joined Theon at the ledge, snow collecting on the fox fur mantle that ringed his gorget. "Raven from Winterfell," Galbart said, handing up a tube sealed in gray wax. "Robb crossed the White Knife yesterday. Ser Roderick rides with a column to man Eastwatch. Bran says the weirwoods whisper of storms." Theon cracked the seal. Bran's sure strokes filled the page, * wolves dream of cold rivers and houses of shattered ice. The heart tree stirs. Hold fast to fire, * beneath, Robb's sharper hand, * if the ice host breaks west, signal. Tallheart Road Tower is stocked with pitch, *. Theon folded the letter. Robb thinks the others might swing around the frost fangs and strike the neck. The neck is choke point and lifeline both, Galbart muttered. If they pour south, Southerns will learn what true winter means. He rubbed chilled hands. "Have we enough gel?" "Enough to slow them," Theon said. "Not enough to drown an army of ice." He studied horizon north of the forest, blue haze where peaks speared cloud. Somewhere in those valleys he had glimpsed the ice host's ritual. "We need allies of fire. Melisandre of Dragonstone claims her god eats shadows. Perhaps it is time we borrow his appetite." Galbart grunted. "You trust red witchcraft?" "I trust whatever burns." Theon's gaze lingered on a curl of emerald flame licking the brazier below. That night they gathered in the Shadow Tower's great hall, Theon, Meej, Galbart, Benjen Tallheart, Ser Dennis Mallister, and Maester Mullen. Wind-hammered shutters, the hearth spat sparks. A crude map of the haunted forest sprawled across the trestle table, black ink valleys webbed with red lines marking sightings. 3 black pebbles represented monoliths still unbroken, 6 bone chips marked ranger patrols now overdue. 2 more scouting parties failed to return, Ser Dennis said, voice taut. "If we bleed men at these numbers, the wall's west flank will stand manned by echoes. If the monoliths bind their magic," Mullen croaked, "shatter them all." He brandished a brittle scroll depicting children glyphs. "Destroy the anchors, the ritual stops." "Easier said," Benjen sighed. "Each stone ring is nested in dead swarms, and now the others keep stronger guard." Meej folded arms. "Then we strike one at a time. Wolves bite the heels until elk stumbles." Theon traced finger along gully lines. "There's a ravine here, blackthorn cut. If we lure a pursuing column through, drop wildfire charges from the cliffs, we might thin numbers and reach the stone behind." "Bait," Meej said. "Who runs the trail?" "I do," Theon answered. No one argued. Perhaps they had expected as much. Preparations spun by torchlight. Reeds braided grass nets to hold glass spheres of wildfire. The Bravosi swordsmith edged curved knives with dragonglass shards. Archers daubed faces black-green to melt into spruce shadows. Theon rode a raven to Eastwatch, * request red priestess. "Bring fire that walks, * he hesitated, then added, "Tell her the night's heart awakens." He sealed the missive with wax spattered green by gel sparks and sent it into the gale. On the third dawn a horn blast sounded along the ice walkway, 3 notes, the call for others in sight. The camp erupted. Theon scrambled to tower top. Out across the forest, snow billowed upward like breath. Through spyglass he saw them, a silver serpent of figures threading trees, each footstep leaving dark patches where frost consumed color. Some rode pale elk or reindeer whose antlers fumed ice. At intervals wights marched chained in ranks, driven by others' whips of frozen light. They advanced due south toward the wall. Ser Dennis issued orders to man every cauldron along parapet. Tarslick bundles of kindling were hauled into murder holes, archers fitted dragonglass points to shafts. But Theon's focus turned west where a smaller detachment branched off, skirting foothills, the perfect size to bait. He descended to the yard and swung into saddle. 10 riders formed quick behind, Meej, Benjen, Lares, 4 reeds, 3 watch scouts. They carried only light packs and gel pots lidded in iron. Sled dogs howled as they sped through postern and down switchbacks, snow fountaining beneath hooves. For 2 hours they rode, keeping Ridgecrest between themselves and the others until they reached Blackthorn Cut, a narrow slit carved by meltwater, walls of shale rising like jagged wings. Theon dismounted, studying stone shelves overhead. Good vantage, but climb treacherous. They cached wildfire charges at base and looped ropes along footholds for quick ascent. Clouds plumed dark, flakes drifted large as moths. Theon's party lit no torches, only breathing and faint jingle of gear disturbed hush. Presently a cracking of branches signaled approach. Through swirling white, the vanguard emerged, 8 wights in torn free folk hides, followed by 2 others glimmering like glass men. Behind trundled a sled bearing an oblong crate of ice, inside which something shifted. Theon glimpsed branch-thin limbs folded like trapped spider legs. A fresh captive. Theon drew breath, then shouted, voice echoing canyon. North remembers. He fired arrow, gel tip flared green, piercing an other's collar. Blue blood hissed. The glass man shrieked and exploded into shards, casting rainbow prisms in moon-pale light. Whites lurched forward. Theon vaulted onto ledge, arrowing another. Meej's war cry thundered. She charged, mace whirling. Lares incinerated 2 wights with torch of gel flame, the fire leaping from cloth to flesh greedily. But the second other advanced, frost spear spinning. It slashed Benjen's thigh, ice blossomed a long wound. Reed archers loosed obsidian darts, 2 struck hip, 1 eye. The other staggered. Benjen gritted teeth, snapping ice crust from wound with dagger. Meej intercepted the other, mace meeting spear. Green sparks burst where gel smeared her weapon studs. The spear cracked, showering ice splinters. The other reeled back and Lares flung a wildfire pot at its feet. Green lotus flame surged, devouring the creature in a wail like wind through chimes. It disintegrated, but more shapes poured behind, 20, 30, a tide of corpse soldiers. Theon's arrow quiver emptied. He signaled retreat. They clambered up ropes to shelf. Below, wights thrusted spears skyward, climbing each other like ants. Meej heaved 2 tar pots, black gel globs rained, igniting. Yet for every flaming corpse 2 more advanced. Their weight shook shale. Time for the cliff fire. Theon nodded. Last fuse of braided hemp soaked in gel, set it a long row of sealed pots embedded above the shelf edge. He struck sparkstone. Flame sputtered green, racing cord. Hold, he yelled. The wave of whites surged. Benjen, bleeding but steady, cut rope ladders as last reed scrambled. Then fuse hissed into first pot. Blast hammered gorge. Night turned emerald. Rock walls blazed, shards of ice and bone whirled. Air homed heat, snow evaporated to hissing steam. The canyon floor became cauldron. When glare dimmed, only charred limbs twitched among debris. The ice crate lay smashed, occupant vanished. But beyond smoke, deeper in forest, horns of ice sounded, new columns advancing. They'll scent this pyre, Meej warned. Theon nodded, heart still rattling ribs. They descended opposite slope and fled south toward Shadow Tower, leaving canyon crackling like green aurora trapped in earth. Snow chased them, flurries thickening into blizzard. The world shrank to tunnel of white lit by phantom glow from distant wildfire reflection. Frozen wind howled, numbing fingers through mittens. Benjen stumbled, Meej hauled him onto saddle. Lares Pike scouted ahead, eyes shining with urgency. Night seemed endless, yet eventually a faint amber luminescence bled through storm, the Shadow Tower beacon, its fire fed high. Relief loosened Theon's chest. Gates opened at their shouts. Inside, surgeons packed Benjen's wound with warmed vine ash to counter ice rot. Scouts reported main ice host still east, yet moving slower, perhaps wary after Monolith's destruction. The captive creature missing from crate remained unaccounted. Maester Mullen bent over recovered shard from the second other. See, he croaked, pointing thin quill. Inside translucent fragment, faint tendrils of blue flame curled like veins. A core of living cold. Fire severs it, but what if flame is leached? Lares Pike spoke quietly. Some wildfire pools cooled after blast. I saw green flame devoured by blue tongues. Fear shivered his words. Fire feeds them as fuel, not bane. This new alarm tremored through hall. For hours they argued, widen torch lines? Mix salt into gel? Mullen suggested adding sulfur crystals. Swordmyth proposed blades forged of dragaglass welded to iron but capacity limited. By dawn, wind-eased, yet sky glowered bruised purple. A horn blast came from east parapet, single note, a rider approaching. Theon ascended. Through drifting flake he saw a banner, stag in a flaming heart. Red Priestess. The gate shuddered open. Melisandre of Ass High rode pale mare, red silks billowing like hearth smoke. Her eyes, redder still, regarded men with heat that stung skin. Behind came a dozen of Stannis' guards, oil lamps flickering. Ser Dennis greeted politely but warily. "You come at king's word or your god's whim?" "Both," Melisandre replied, voice soft and carrying. "The god of light heeds whispers carried by ravens. He guides my feet where night gathers." Theon strode forward. "Then guide fire against ice." Melisandre's gaze slid to him as if measuring soul weight. "You have walked waters of shadow," she murmured, "and chosen flame. I will show you how to wield it." She produced a pouch of red powder. "This is pyrelite, dried essence of king's blood. Mix with your green gel, and fire will burn hotter than cold may drink." Skepticism rippled among watch brothers. Some muttered of witchcraft. But when she sprinkled pinch of red atoms into brazier, flame roared white gold, casting heat that melted ice from shields 3 yards off. Men gasped. Melisandre turned back. Such blaze, laced with light, sears even the heart of the great other. She insisted on performing ritual atop the wall that night. Theon allowed, desperation outweighing doubt. Under half-veiled stars she painted glyphs in salt and ash, chanting in tongue older than Valyria. A vial of king's blood, said to be Stannis' nephew Edric Storm, sizzled on coals, its droplets sparking pillars of gold. The wall, ancient and indifferent, hummed. The next sunrise revealed sky clear, air brittle. Scouts returned with tidings. The ice host had halted. Some whites drifted aimless, others stood statuesque. Whatever Melisandre had stirred clamped paws upon their march. But midday, a thunder-like glacier caving boomed east. Watchmen on tower cried alarm. The wall trembled. Theon sprinted upstairs. Through spyglass he saw a jagged fissure carving down ice face 3 leagues away, blue cracks glowing with inner light. At base of wall, snow fountained as something vast hammered. An ice giant, bigger than any tail, swung limbs of crystal, chipping blocks the size of cottages. Around its feet whites shoveled fragments, clearing breach. They awakened bigger shadows, Melisandre warned at his elbow. "My flames provoke them. We must answer with dragon fire." "No dragons here," Theon snapped. Her red lips curved. "Not yet, but there is still king's blood." She looked to him. He bristled. "I am no king. Blood of kings flows in your veins through Theon Greyjoy," she whispered. "Sacrifice sparks fires stronger than wildfire." Theon recoiled. "I will not be bled so you can feed your god." Melisandre's scarlet eyes glittered. "Then find the fire that needs no blood, Dragonfire reborn. The storm of ice will not wait." That night Theon paced ramparts, wrestling with impossible choices. Blood sacrifice? Summon dragons? How? Dany across sea may be months away. He could only fight with weapons at hand. He ordered all gel stores mixed with pyrelite. Smiths worked through darkness, forging arrowheads with iron tails to carry more flame. Theon wrote ravens again, this time to White Harbor, to Winterfell, to every holdfast. Send pitch, sulfur, obsidian, men. The fissure in wall grew each hour, chipped by the ice giant's relentless pounding. By third dawn stones shook from tower floors. Theon stood before assembled garrison, voice hoarse. "We hold until wolves run out of breath or until flame gnaws the last of us. Those who ride for hearths behind cannot falter. We stand for their knights." Cheers ragged but fierce rose. They stationed archers along fissure rim, launching white gold fire shafts into climbing whites. Flame plumed, corpses fell, but the giant heaved shoulders, shrugging fire like sparks. Benjen suggested using gel barrels detonated at its feet. Meej swore to carry them. At dusk, with wind swirling icy needles, they executed plan. 2 sleds packed with gel pyre barrels hauled by hounds along parapet to fissure. Meej, Galbart, Lares guiding. Others loosed frost spears. 1 dog skewered, sled flipped. Lares leapt, hauling barrel to edge. Meej hurled torch. Barrel ignited midair, struck giant's chest. Exploded starburst of white flames. Giant staggered, wailing like mountains splitting. Second barrel crashed at feet, green, red, white conflagration fusing. Ice cracked like thunder. The colossus shattered into shards that rained, slicing whites beneath. Breach clogged by rubble. Cheers burst, hope flaring. Yet Melisandre stood apart, eyes distant. "The knight's heart still beats," she said. "This is but pulse slowed." Theon approached. "If you know way to end it, speak." She studied him. "Across sea, the mother of dragons hatches flame that walks. Send Raven to Meereen. Promise her the North's loyalty if she brings her children to melt shadows. Offer your chain of Pike as token." Theon stiffened. His chain, symbol of past and pledge to future. Yet dragonfire might be only path. He inhaled. "I will send letter," he said, "but winter may swallow north before dragons sail." "Then gather every hearthfire together," Melisandre answered. "We stand a night longer, we win a day for dragons to fly." Ravens winged off, time sank to rhythm of attack and reprieve. Each dawn brought probing waves, whites testing barricades, others casting spears of rime. Gelpire arrows and flame nets held. Workers reinforced fissure with ice blocks fused by wildfire heat. Some walls glowed faint green beneath snow like veins of emerald. Men began painting gray wolf sigils on shields rimmed with red powder, calling themselves fire wolves. Yet casualties mounted. A reed scout froze after spear nick. 3 watch lads lost to falling ice. Benjen's thigh blackened though Mullen leached daily. Theon slept little. He walked ramparts at moonset, listening to wall breathe. One brittle midnight, an oilskin raven perched at parapet. Message from Winterfell. Bran's hand urgent. Asterisk, the heart tree dreams of a stair of wings. Seeds of fire may take root in frozen wood. Speak words of old tongue upon the wall and light will heed. Asterisk below, Rob, hold. Theon took scroll to Melisandre. She traced Bran's runes. Boy communes with green seers, she murmured. A stair of wings, perhaps a call to the children's fire song. She turned to Theon. Bring me to the heart of the wall. They descended into ice caves, hollowed caverns lit by guttering torches. Blue crystals glittered like stars. At a narrow aperture where cold rills whispered, Melisandre knelt and painted glyphs in ash and red powder. She lit small flame in cupped palm, chanting. The glow grew until cave walls blazed gold. Theon felt warmth seep through mail. Then a sound bloomed, distant beating of wings. Echo or memory? Wind stirred, smelling of pine and stone hearth. Flame lifted, shaping into twisting ribbon that soared up vent, vanishing into night. Melisandre sagged. A beacon, she whispered. If dragons taste wind of magic, they will come. Theon could hope. But he read the exhaustion in her eyes, power drawn from life. And ice pressed on all sides. Weeks shuffled. Supplies dwindled. Manderly ships racing north were trapped by pack ice, their cargo of pitch lost. But riders from Winterfell arrived with sleds of dried peat and barrels of lamp oil. Among them Rickon Stark, defiant, claiming Bran dreamed he must bring Shaggy Dog to scare ghosts. Robb had relented reluctantly, sending him with giant dire wolf and a guard of umbers. Theon scolded boy, but Rickon only flashed wolfish grin. That night Shaggy Dog patrolled ramparts, hackles bristling at distant whiteness. The whites kept curiously back. Another midnight, horn blasts rock tower 4 times, code for breach. The fisher's rubble had been cleared by whites under cover of snow squall. They poured through. Battle roared a long tunnel. Theon led countercharge. With gel lances. Flame whipped corridor. Rickon slipped from guard to fight, slashing with short sword. A white lunged. Shaggy Dog intercepted, fangs ripping frozen sinew. In swirl of flame and rot, Theon glimpsed more monolith shards embedded in white's chests, glowing. They served as portable conduits of glyph energy. Aim for the stones, he shouted. Arrows struck crystals. They fractal shattered, blue fire leaking. Whites collapsed, inert, yet others advanced behind, cold radiance flaying heat from torches. Laurie's pike flung last wildfire pot. Burst painted tunnel jade, halting charge. Dawn light found passage carpeted in black ash. Shaggy Dog licked wounds while Rickon, eyes gleaming with battle rush, received earboxing from Meej. The boy only laughed. Losses heavy. 2 umbers, 1 bear archer, 5 watch, but corridor sealed again with iron grate. Theon studied recovered monolith shard. Smaller than fist, it pulsed faint. Melisandre held it, hissed as frost climbed her wrist despite heat within. Cold and fire twin within, she murmured. We might turn their blood against them. She proposed forging arrowheads encasing shard slivers with pyrelite gel. When fired into bulk of host, they might overload ice magic and combust enemy from inside. Risk: arrow could detonate in bowman's hand. Volunteers stepped forward anyway. Benjen ravaged by ice rot but resolved. Lares with single eye blazing. Even Rickon tried until Theon shut him down. Forge set to work. Swordmith hammered iron casings. Meej ground shards to splinters. By dusk 10 arrows shimmered opalescent. They called them Witchwife's teeth. Scouts reported host gathering again at dusk, perhaps final assault. Blizzard lifted, moonful. Ice horizon glowed eerie. The garrison manned walls. Melisandre lit braziers of pyrelite, tongues shooting white. Silence, then drums like hail as whites marched. From Treeline poured tide thousands. Others strode tall, eyes comet bright. Among them towered 2 new giants stitched of hoarfrost. The fisher shuddered beneath assault. Atop wall, archers fired Witchwife's teeth. First arrow streaked white trail, struck white cluster. Sudden detonation burst column of blue-white flames sucking heat from air, then expelling shockwave of searing gold. Corpses vaporized, nearby others staggered, ice armor cracking. Second arrow hit giant's shoulder, explosion sheared arm clean, giant toppling. Cheers rose, but supply small. Whites reached gate. Battering rams hammered. Gate post splintered. Theon led reserves to inner yard, gel torches in hand. Shaggy dog snarled, hackles ablaze with torch glow. Gate burst. Whites flooded like Black River. Flame met flesh, steam hissed. Others stepped through, spear whistling. Theon parried with wolf steel, frost-biting blade. He swung, spear snapped, Mead's mace caved chest, Benjen's dragonglass Pugio stabbed spine, shattering. Yet pressure unrelenting. Melisandre appeared, red hair streaming, eyes incandescent. She raised hands, from braziers of vortex of white gold flame coiled, lashing corridor. Whites ignited like tinder. Stone blackened. The others shrieked, retreating. A fire twisted further, too far, licking ceiling beams. Ice melted, water hissed. Theon yelled for buckets. Men doused. Flame subsided. Melisandre sank to knees, drained. The fight raged still. Witchwife arrows spent, they relied on grit. Shaggy dog tore, Rickon darted behind wolf, stabbing ankles. Lares's torch brand almost fused to hand, yet he swung. Hours bled. Finally horns signaled enemy withdrawing. Dawn fuchsia spread over mangled field, piles of ashes, shards of frost, steaming splinters. Victor's elation dimmed when they tallied fallen. Benjen tall heart, struck by frost spear while protecting Meej. 15 watch, 6 Mormont women. Lares Pike missing, last seen luring whites over parapet. Theon held Benjen's frost-pale hand as life left, whispering he'd tell Bran of his valor. Meej wept openly, blood and soot-streaking cheeks. Snow began again, gentle, covering dead like shroud. Theon climbed watch to breathe cold that stabbed lungs. Ice host had retreated north, broken into fragments. Yet threat lingered, monoliths still beating somewhere. He fingered Bran's quartz wolf. We pay and pay, he whispered. Resolve hardened, they must end source, not repel waves. Next week ravens brought 2 startling messages. From Eastwatch, word of Daenerys Targaryen's fleet sighted near Skagos, dragons soaring above. She sailed for White Harbor bearing an offer of alliance. And from Meereen a letter, sealed with 3-headed dragon, addressed to Lord Guardian Theon of the North. Asterisk, I come with fire, but fire must be guided lest it scorch. Show me the path beyond the wall and we will melt night itself. Asterisk. Theon felt heart thunder. Dragons living wildfire no ice could swallow. But guiding them over wall and haunted forest required lineage of Valyria or lore of children. Bran's next raven-solved part. Asterisk weirwood stare of wings born. Bring mother of dragons to Hearttree glade beyond shivering sea. Their roots and fire will braid. Asterisk. Theon closed eyes. Task immense. Escort queen through war zone. Parley with Stannis' claim. Keep North united. But path clear. Gather pack. Forge joint strike. Carry fire to Monolith Heart. He convened council. Robb rode up within days. Grim yet hopeful. Meej, Galbart, Ser Dennis, Melisandre present. Plan formed. Robb fortifies wall. Theon escorts dragons to glade. Melisandre ties fire song with greenseer magic. Glover levies hold snow guard route. Spring thaw still far, but dawn bled pink across snow at council's end. Theon prepared to ride south to White Harbor, led by Shaggy Dog pacing restless at door. Rickon refused to stay. After stout debate, Robb assigned him as envoy to Queensguard under Umber watch. Meej would guard wall until Queen arrived. Galbart command ranger attacks on remaining monoliths. Before departure, Theon visited Benjen's cairn, a mound of stone frosted white, crowned with broken dragoglass dagger. He placed quartz wolf upon it, murmured promise to end night. Then he mounted and rode, convoy trailing, umbers, reeds, Mormont archers, and Melisandre cloaked crimson. Snowflakes glittered around, hooves like sparks. Below, winter's wind howled through forests of ice, but horizon south warmed with faint glow, the promise of dragons. Theon felt sea in his blood stir, not with longing but with tide of change. He spurred horse, banners whipping, grey wolf stitched with red flame rising, beacon to hearths and battlefields alike. Whatever storms awaited, he would ride them, loyal to the pack, guardian of the fire that might save them all. And the north, battered yet unbroken, breathed with him. Each heart a silent drum, each hearth a spark, waiting for the dawning blaze to chase winter's longest night into legend.